What's up, everybody? It's your boy DJ the Wise Penny, and welcome to another episode of Reel Me In: a movie podcast. On this week's episode, Joel and I will take a look at the world of movie news and movie trailers that have dropped throughout the past 2 weeks because we were gone last week, and we will have our review of the new 2017 Stephen King adaptation of It. So if you hate clowns, or if you hate me, or if you hate cantaloupes, or hate bedpost, I have no clue what you hate, but if you hate any of those things I just mentioned, you might want to steer away from this episode because we're going to be plaguing it with a bunch of it. So what will Joel and I think of It, and will we hate it? What is it? Do we hate it? Do we love it? I have no fucking clue. Anyways, let's get this started. So you're going to have to sit down, relax, and find out. What is up? What is up, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Reel Me In: a movie podcast, where you didn't really ask for it, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. This is a podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and anything about movies. I'm one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and hey guys, listen, if you're searching on the internet for some clown porn, because you got your jimmies and a rustle while watching It this weekend, and you want to get on or whatever, and you accidentally came across this podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we can convince you to be one. This is episode 198. We are getting dangerously close to episode 200, and if you're new to the show, welcome. What we usually do is we go over some movie news and trailers for you guys, commentate on them, and just give our spin on them, if you will, and then of course we will have our major review or reviews for the weekend. Movies that have come out, and of course box office results for the weekend. So a couple things. One, we're only doing one movie this week, and that would be the 2017 version of It. I was a little confused because when Joel said we're doing It this weekend, I thought it was November 1990, and I thought I was 11 months old again. No, it is the 2017 incarnation of It. That is what we'll be doing today, and we usually do box office results for the weekend. But Papa Chase, I'm speaking to myself in the third person, I will be busy this weekend, so we're recording early, so you guys get this. Not only do you get the episode early, there will be no box office results, so we'll cut it shorter for you guys if you hate us that much. But I'll put the box office results in the description on Sunday, so look out for that. So that's typical what we usually do on the weekend or whatever, but this is this week's show for sure. And before I introduce the co-host over there, if you guys will please rate, subscribe, comment, spread this around, and let people know this is a decent podcast to listen to on the shitter, and hopefully you won't die like Elvis, and you will have a prosperous life. So Joel is over there, my beautiful co-host. Joel, how are we doing this week? Because I kind of missed you last week, and I felt like I feel like Joel and I are like on this like crack adventure, and like every single Sunday we have to get our fix, right? And so we're on a scheduled drug thing or whatever. And so last weekend when we didn't have one, it almost felt like we were going through withdrawals, and I'm sure Joel was shaking in the corner. I'm sure I was shaking in the corner somewhere. So Joel, we are back, and how are you doing?
Oh, just surviving the hurricanes that have sent rain washing over our city. Obviously, our thoughts are with everybody out there who's affected. Irma's hitting like Florida now, basically, and of course we want to send our thoughts out to them. And then there's another one like after that. Apparently, 3 hurricanes in a row, like in 3 weeks, is a lot to deal with. And but other than that, I mean, that's obviously stressful. But for me, it's just kind of been a really busy period of work. Couple of people have left, and one was on vacation, so I've had a lot of hours, and it's basically been work home. So busy, but pretty good. Excited about this episode. There's a lot to discuss because we have missed the last few weeks of news. We did the fall preview. We didn't do any news. We did you did the extra episode, and obviously didn't do any news, and then we haven't covered any trailers. So this is gonna be a packed episode, and with so much to talk about, with the movie that we're discussing, this is gonna be a fun one for sure.
Yeah, so. This is exactly the type of show I want to come back to after a 2-week dry period, blue ball period, whatever you want to say, because there is a lot to talk about for sure. But yeah, if you guys are in the areas that have been affected by the hurricanes, hopefully you guys stay safe, and it's just an absolute travesty of what's happening. I got family members in Florida, and I know some people down in Houston that got affected by Harvey and whatnot. So it's just bad. Welcome to the world that we live in. It is just a crazy place. But please stay safe out there. But hopefully we can provide you guys some entertainment to forget about the crap going on in the world. So let's start with some movie news, Joel. Now, I'm sure Joel is just kind of itching to talk about this because this is like his bread and butter. This is for the franchise that he goes to. This is the one he pops chubs in. Like I get it. I pop chubs in certain franchises too, primarily the Saw franchise because I love me some torture porn. But there's a certain franchise by the name of Warstar, and they have a trilogy in the works. The 8th film, aka the third or the second or the sequel in the third trilogy. That would be Star Wars: The Last Jedi. It is coming out this December, and I'm sure Joel has already pre-ordered 500 tickets. And so, number 9 is coming out in 2019, so it's just around the corner. Now, Colin Trevorrow was supposed to direct it, and he brought us Safety Not Guaranteed, a very smaller film. Then he brought us the 4th highest-grossing movie of all time, Jurassic World, and of course he went back and did a smaller film, The Book of Henry, and he was supposed to do Star Wars. The news is he got let go. He got canned. He got dumped. He got kicked to the curb, and Kathleen Kennedy was like, "Get the fuck out of here. I don't want to deal with you anymore." It was an amicable split according to the Star Wars PR people. That's not the real question here, Joel. I'm sure you're going to bring it up as well. It's the fact that all these directors are leaving and being fired off of Star Wars properties. And it just happens too frequently, and it almost looks like Kathleen Kennedy doesn't know how to manage over there. If you look at her track record, she's primarily only worked with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, so she really hasn't had that much adversity to many other directors besides those two. And so I think her working with different people and different personalities, I think there's a lot of clashing, and I don't think she knows how to kind of handle it or whatnot. She's pretty much learning on the job. Pretty much ever since she signed on as the head of Lucasfilm. So this is just not good. I don't care who they hire next. It just looks so sloppy on the management side of things, and I don't like the fact that all these directors are coming in and just leaving because of creative differences. Now, there is a difference between what Colin Trevorrow did and what Phil Lord and Chris Miller did. What Phil Lord and Chris Miller did was basically hijack the movie and do their own interpretation of Han Solo and make it into a slapstick, goofy comedy when they clearly had a direction and a vision set. They kind of went off the rails and went rogue a little bit, so I understand that firing. But, with stuff like a Josh Trank or now Colin Trevorrow, it just... And, of course, the Phil Lord and Chris Miller, I know it's different, but it just adds fuel to the fire. It just looks bad from all angles. As far as a replacement, I honestly don't care. I'm not saying that J.J. Abrams is a bad director or anything, but he's serviceable. Gareth Edwards, serviceable. I think Rian Johnson's the only good one out of those three to kind of emerge as one of the directors. I'm curious to see what he will do with The Last Jedi. So to me, it's not really important who they get. It's just they got Ron Howard, and he's been pretty serviceable, except for Rush, over the past several years. So it's Star Wars. People are going to go see it, so it doesn't matter who they rehire, but it looks bad on Kathleen Kennedy's side. So Joel, when you hear this news, well, first of all, were you even excited that Colin Trevorrow was even going to direct Star Wars 9? And what do you think about this news overall?
I was, on the basis of the fact that I seem to be one of the few people who had a blast with Jurassic World.
I did too.
I felt like he took that sort of material, which here's the thing, with the Jurassic Park franchise and with Star Wars franchise, what really drives the franchises are the pulpy material, the broad strokes of the material. With Star Wars, really what you need is somebody who understands that he needs to have fun with the world or with the universe, if you will. And it's the same with Jurassic Park. All they really need to do is convey, the very simple kind of theme there that was humans are dumb and they decided to bring back dinosaurs. And really every movie in that franchise has done that concept pretty well, and I felt like he did that well. But it sounds weird to say it, but I feel like with stuff like Star Wars and everything, it's really the screenplays or the stories that drive this stuff. So it doesn't really matter who directs it. We never really talk about George Lucas intrinsically with this franchise, not because he directed 4 of the previous ones, but because he was the one who created the universe. And so I think that's, the point of the conversation is that it's the universe that's compelling rather than any specific voices. We don't really talk about J.J. Abrams with Force Awakens because we still see it as this world. We don't see it as a director's movie. We see it as part of a franchise. And it's going to be the same thing with Rian Johnson. It's the same thing with Gareth Edwards. And, even though people don't really hear these names too much, it's the same with Irving Kershner. And it's the same with Richard Marquand, who directed Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And so for me, it was a case of like general confusion about what's going on behind the scenes and the fact that it's so chaotic at Disney right now. I mean, they do this to Marvel as well. And, they'll bring on somebody with vision and then, creative differences, quote unquote, cause them to leave the project. And it's really because they bring on creative voices and they realize that they're too creative. And that's not a slag on Marvel at all. They have a lot of creativity, but they also want, they also do care, let's face it, about the bottom line, and the bottom line here is the set in stone, blueprint for the series. And so with Star Wars, they have a specific vision, and Josh Trank obviously didn't have that. Colin Trevorrow apparently didn't have that. Phil Lord and Chris Miller went off the rails. So I feel like, people are joking, and people joked about it when Josh Trank dropped out. People are joking that this happened because of the Book of Henry, and I kind of scoffed at it at first, and then I realized, maybe perhaps Trevorrow is just a little too risky. I think that there is an element here of the studio wanting somebody who's safe. I feel honestly like they need to hire, and this is going to sound amazing to you because I've made my thoughts clear about the Fast and Furious franchise, but I think that they need to bring on Justin Lin because I thought that he did a bang-up job with Star Trek Beyond. And I think that, like J.J. Abrams, I think that they need to have somebody who's dipped their toes in both franchises, because right now they're basically sort of the same, not really the same, but very similar. They're both silly space operas, again. And, Star Trek kind of for the first time. And so that's what I think they need to bring on. I'm like you. I really am, vaguely excited to see who they bring on, but this is not a series about its directors. And so that's my thoughts about it. Everything's going to be okay. As for Kathleen Kennedy, I think that she's doing the best she can with what she has. I'm not blaming her too much. I think that she's managing essentially again a set in stone plan for the Star Wars franchise, and she's seeing directors kind of come on and say, well, we want to be a little bit more creative than what you have in mind. And if she, this is a business, and if she's running this like a business, then she's got to part ways with some people in manners that are maybe not timely, because, it feels like this movie was about to start filming, so does it get pushed back? And that's actually, I've said it before, and I feel like it's probably going to happen with the Han Solo movie, and I feel like it's probably going to happen with this one, is that they're all going to be moved to December, and Star Wars is going to be a December thing. Because I feel like these are a couple of pretty major setbacks, and so I'm certainly interested to see what happens. And of course, if this happens, then that means Avatar gets moved back. But of course, Avatar's never happened. Anyway, nevertheless, again, I think that Kennedy's doing well within these very like closed off constraints of what she's working with, but it's not a great optic situation. It doesn't look great. I will agree with that. Again, I think that they need to get Justin Lin in there, or they need to get a female director in there to get some female directors on Star Wars. Maybe Michelle MacLaren, who directed some Breaking Bad episodes. Go along with the director of Breaking Bad episodes kind of thing here with Rian Johnson doing episode 8, and have somebody else from Breaking Bad do episode 9, or somebody like Ava DuVernay after she's done with Wrinkle in Time, or something like that. And but that's obviously a conversation for when they announce who is directing it. And right now I feel like my whole thing is that it really doesn't matter. A director's vision is secondary to the vision of the universe, kind of. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, you're right. Like, this franchise has never been about directors. Like, to be honest with you, Rian Johnson is the first, like, high-caliber director to ever be attached to a Star Wars film. When you think about what he did with Brick, when you think about what he did with Looper, directing several episodes of television, including, I would say, top 3 out of all 60 episodes of Breaking Bad with Ozymandias. Like, the guy is a visionary, and so he's actually the first real good director. And I know people are out there like, well, what about J.J. Abrams? I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. I think J.J. Abrams is a very entertaining director. But you know where his strengths actually lie on is marketing and promotion. This motherfucker with his Bad Robot Company has done some of the best marketing I've ever seen with like the Cloverfield franchise. Like, the guy knows how to work an audience. Like, he even did the same thing with I think it was with 11/22/63, the Hulu Stephen King adaptation. Like, he did a really great job marketing that. So, like, he's a really good promoter. Rian Johnson's a really good director. But Joel's right. If you can just kind of like get that caliber of like a Rian Johnson, oh shit! Like, you'll make me excited for a Star Wars film. I know it's like an alternate universe, but like that's just
world will end. The world will end.
The world will end when I'm actually more excited for a Star Wars film than a comic book movie. So,
and honestly, like I'm so in love with Rian Johnson that, and don't tell anybody, even though I'm speaking to thousands of people right now. Don't tell anybody. But I'm actually like almost more excited for the fact that it's a Rian Johnson Star Wars movie than the fact that it's just a Star Wars movie.
Like, no, I am too.
I love this guy. I loved every movie he's directed.
Like, if people, like, I haven't said this enough since 2012, but I'll say it again. Like, Looper is a wonderful sci-fi film. And so if he can apply, like, that kind of, like, realistic, kind of gritty sci-fi into Star Wars, oh, shit. The Last Jedi is going to blow the roof off of Force Awakens, and I can't wait. So, but Joel is absolutely right. Like, I'm more excited for the fact that it's from, like, I just want it to be called not Star Wars: The Last Jedi, but movie previously directed by Brick, Looper, and Ozymandias director. Like, I want to see that.
And The Brothers Bloom is great too. Everybody needs to see that. It's sort of his lost kind of movie, the one that nobody talks about, but it came out in 2009. It's got Adrian Brody and a bunch of other people. The kid from Where the Wild Things Are, I think, was in it. That was
which one was that again?
The Brothers Bloom.
Oh yeah.
It's really good, and it's really underrated, and he directed that one as well. And I feel like, I was going to agree with you, too, on J.J. Abrams. There's this, like, it feels like a couple years ago there was this massive cultural conversation about whether or not he was a good director. And I don't really care if he's a good director, because you're right. He's kind of one of those people who puts out solid product. He's basically a Ron Howard.
Yeah.
He really is. He works primarily in pastiche. Even with his Star Trek movies, they call back to the other ones in a way that, in terms of story elements rather than tone, and then the tone, calls back to Star Wars, because Star Wars was the thing he loved, and I felt like that was the major strength. That's why I think, for me, Force Awakens is probably his best movie, is because all of his strengths came together in that movie, and you know, he did it with Mission Impossible. It was a throwback to, you know, kind of John Woo. It was closest to John Woo from Mission Impossible 2 than anything else in the series, because I think that he was kind of working with the previous. So he does that. He works with pastiche. He's good at setup of, you know, universes and worlds. He's not specifically a storyteller in the sense that Rian Johnson is. And so I feel like they're in different calibers. It's going to be very interesting to see that shift in this series. And so that's why I want them to get a and in fact, it's kind of an interesting parallel, because you'd have George Lucas, who had this grand vision that was, you know, broad strokes, but also taking care to, you know, deal with the details with the first Star Wars. And then you had a darker vision with Irvin Kershner's version, which was The Empire Strikes Back, and he was already known for directing darker movies, and it was a surprise pick for director. And then you had Richard Marquand for the third one. Nobody really knew who he was. He kind of disappeared after that, and he was a solid scenarist, kind of. He just handled action scenes. He was kind of quiet behind the scenes. He let the screenplay do the work. This is what I'm reading about his process. He was an involved director in the sense that he directed the movie, but he didn't really care about, you know, his voice being so huge in it. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like it's an interesting parallel. And so that's why I feel like we need to get Justin Lin in there, because I think that he can, you know, bring this thing to a close. This it's going to be a various cycles of trilogies, and this cycle is almost, you know, it's going to come to an end. And I think that we need somebody in there to just handle the action scenes, do the solid product work in the series, and this middle part is going to be the meat of the trilogy. That's what I think.
Correct.
And so anyway.
Yeah, no, I just like I said, just to wrap it up, like I don't care who they get. It's like they could literally get Joel and I to direct it, and no one's going to give a fuck because it's Star Wars. Joel, if we ever get hired as co-directors for a Star Wars film, just know that we will hijack it. We will make it into a goofy comedy, and we will add a couple stoners in there. Just like what, you know, what's really funny is, like, when I think of, like, yeah, when I think of Phil Lord and Chris Miller, like, hijacking Han Solo, I just imagine they turn into like a super bad comedy, and I'm just like, yeah, these fucking guys. All right, speaking of stoner adaptations,
yeah,
yeah, exactly. That was my attempt at a segue. So Casey Affleck, who does look like a stoner from A Ghost Story earlier this year, Joe Wright has directed some movies, and of course Jason Blum, one of my favorite producers, and you guys can all suck it if you hate his movies, whatever. Anyways, they're going to be teaming up for an adaptation that's going to involve stoners. Cool. Seriously, like, if they get Casey Affleck to grow out his beard and, like, have his hair all, like, wild and shit, like from A Ghost Story and, like, Manchester by the Sea, and just kind of look disheveled throughout the entire thing, sure. I would need to see, like, either like a concept or, you know, a trailer, some type of, like, visual aid to kind of help my argument. But I think with this team up, it's just a weird group of people, because Jason Blum, this fucking guy, just kind of goes after what he wants, and he'll get shit done. And I'm glad that, and I said this, you know, earlier in the year, I forgot what story we were talking about, but I'm glad that Jason Blum is doing more than just horror. Like, the guy, regardless if you like his movies or not, he's a smart producer. He's trying different things, and you gotta give him credit for that, whether you think they work or not. Because if you just brand yourself as horror, you're going to put yourself into that corner. And his movies are making bank. And I still have this theory that since Split and Get Out did so damn well this year, he's going to take more risk. And he has that extra capital now to where he can be like, okay, let's try this drama now. Or, oh, let's try, you know, this comedy, or, you know, this thriller or whatever. Like, and he's starting to kind of do that. You know, his Tilt company did release Slight earlier this year. He is one of the producers, and Blumhouse logo is in front of Whiplash, so I know he wants to kind of, like, diversify his portfolio. this is an interesting team up for sure. But Casey Affleck is starting to have this resurgence ever since he won his Oscar for Manchester by the Sea. I really liked him in A Ghost Story. I mean, the guy does, like, I'm not even joking when I say this, like, the guy does so much with a goddamn sheet over his head. So he's a really good actor. Very weird pairing for sure, but interested in nonetheless. So Joel, does this piece of news tickle your fancy?
Well, first of all, the movie is simply called Stoner.
Oh, perfect.
It is not about a pot smoker person. It is about a person named William Stoner, who, and I'm going to read this, and apparently this is important to say as the synopsis of the book, because everywhere I'm seeing gives basically the whole thing away. So I apologize for those who literally don't want to know anything about anything ever and don't ever read any movie news, but apparently this is what it's about. An unremarkable assistant professor who lives an unremarkable life, has an unhappy marriage, is estranged from his child, and eventually dies. So I guess it's just like in the way of like his sad movies, because he had Manchester by the Sea, and that's literally, he's, as some people put it, the saddest person in any movie in 2016. And then of course he was a ghost, which is pretty sad, floating through his life and various other timelines in A Ghost Story. And now this, so apparently he's just on like a sad movie kick, I guess. That'll be interesting. I'm certainly looking forward to it, though. I've heard that the book is amazing. It's a book by a person named John Williams, who is not the composer. It's certainly interesting. I love Jason Blum. I mean, I think that people would have to be like foolish to the extreme to not recognize the guy's brilliance at producing, whether they like his movies or not. Something like Whiplash, making it all the way to Best Picture and Director. I think Director, anyway. He just does good work with small budgets, and so it's obviously easy to admire that about him. And I'm certainly excited to see whatever this becomes, because I don't know anything about the novel. I haven't read it except the fact that for years I've heard pretty amazing things. And Joe Wright, we're about to talk about this in our new segment that we're adding to the show, but he's about to like rule the Oscar season. So I like him when he's on. When he's on, he makes great work, and Pride and Prejudice and Anna Karenina are testaments to that fact. And I think that he can do really good work, and I think that this is kind of perfect material for him. So, all right, yeah.
No, and of course, like, I hope you guys know I was joking. Like, I knew it wasn't like a stoner movie. But it's just really funny when Joel sends the notes over, because like if you just look at it as Casey Affleck, Joe Wright, and Jason Blum make a stoner or whatever, and like adaptations to the next line, so you just cut that out. It's just funny. But it's kind of weird that Casey Affleck's on this like sad kick right now, because I'm telling you, A Ghost Story will just make you reevaluate your life, and your soul will probably wither away and die.
That movie forces inspection of one's own mortality. It's amazing. And,
it's subtle. It's actually like very
subtly does that. Yeah, but yeah. This could be a similar situation where it's just a very sad movie, but kind of an important one. And that's what I've heard, that the novel is. It's incredibly sad. It just doesn't wallow in that sadness, and that's important. So I think that's what Manchester by the Sea did, and this seems to be sort of similar. And I've heard that the novel is straight drama too. So while there's a sort of comic way of synopsizing it, it's very much a dramatic, very sad, and very honest, real portrait of just total, stasis in your life. So that certainly seems to be in line with what Affleck is interested in right now, and so I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah, no, and I've been yearning for Jason Blum to slap, his logo and his production company in front of another Oscar contender, just like with Whiplash. So hopefully this will be it. What's also not an Oscar contender? That was a terrible segue. Shia LaBeouf is not going to be in Indiana Jones 5. Who gives a shit? When Joel sent me this piece of news, I was like, what was his name again? What was it? Skippy? Rudy? Tony? Like, I don't even remember his fucking name in the movie of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So inherently, I do not care about if his character shows up in the fifth one or not. And to be honest with you, like, I don't think they need him anyways. It's like, this fifth Indiana Jones movie will probably be the last one Harrison Ford ever does. So just make it about him, focus on his life, and he can die peacefully. Not him, his character. Who knows? He actually might die on set. That would be very poetic, actually. But that'd be really funny if he actually died on, like, The Force Awakens. He actually got stabbed with a real lightsaber and he, like, got thrown off of the edge. You'd be like, oh, shit. He went for some method acting there, folks. I don't care. I really don't. Shia LaBeouf. You know what's really funny about Shia LaBeouf? I know he gets a lot of shit for his antics, and yeah, he seems like kind of an asshole. When you hear about these stories of him getting into bar fights and shit, he's still a great actor. Like, I still like his kind of like modern resurgence a little bit. He does all these kind of like riskier films, whether you want to talk about Nymphomaniac or, when he does like a kind of a bigger movie and shines in it like a Fury. So I like what he does, but he does not belong in this franchise. Joel, what do you think about this story?
Well, it is a surprise to no one because he hated shooting Crystal Skull. He hated it. He's talked pretty openly about the fact that he did not get along with Spielberg. And it's apparently Spielberg is kind of a bull in terms, like, on the set. He's very he's not a dictator. He just controls everything very, very closely, and it's just, I guess it was a personality thing. So he's talked pretty openly about the fact that, he shot Transformers and Crystal Skull back to back, and he hated the whole process of it. And so
because Steven Spielberg was an EP on Transformers, so like he had to have double Spielberg at once.
Yeah. And just that, probably a year and a half or so with him, in some capacity. Just kind of kill him on the big movie, the blockbuster movie thing. So I suspect that, honestly, they probably did try to go to him, and he said no. And I suspect that that's why, because I think that in some previous version of this franchise, there was going to be a lot of, stuff that, he played Indiana Jones' son, so there was going to be that involved. By the way, you gave a lot of great, really funny I don't even know if you actually do remember the character's name, but you gave a lot of funny, like, suggestions, and his name was Mutt. So
okay, so it was something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, I think Skip would be better.
Skip,
but I mean, this
Jones.
is a surprise to nobody. Honestly, like, Skip, yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's a surprise to no one. Honestly, like, the guy was never going to be in it. Like, it's maybe way early on, as the first one, maybe, if it had been 2 years or something and he had been involved in like a contract, he might have done it, or maybe he would have pulled out. I don't know. I know that the shift was kind of slow, when he turned toward more independent stuff, and then his antics started. But I feel like it's probable that that hating the blockbuster thing was kind of the beginning of the antics, where he just kind of lost himself and needed to find himself, and so he had these antics. He's trying to find his way back. He actually apologized for some of them, I think. He kind of came clean about, that he was not in a good place. So, but this does not surprise me. I feel like they probably went to him, and he immediately thought back to that period of time and was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. And you know what? More power to him. I don't want him to do something that makes him unhappy. So, because I just want happiness for everybody. And
it's like you said, he's kind of found this resurgence in his career with all these like kind of smaller independent films. And I think, to be honest with you, he should just stay there, like stay in that realm, because you're actually really good when you succeed.
Yeah, I mean, he's really found his niche of doing solid work with directors with vision. That's what he likes to do. and he clearly doesn't like big, egomaniac. Obviously, every director is an egomaniac, but to some degree, otherwise they would never get anything made. But the biggest egomaniacs are the ones that do, amazing works, and I think that his personality is a lot smaller than the big directors. Hence why he apparently could not stand any time spent with Michael Bay, on any of the 3 movies that he did. And that's why, he turned away from that. And I mean, it's, he's just kind of finding his own way, and I respect him for that.
Yeah,
so,
it's one of those things to where, like, I know this is going to shock people, but, like, I've been rooting for this guy ever since, Joel and I were kids. Like, if you want to think about people that were born in the 90s and kind of grew up in the 2000s and whatnot, there's like a handful of, like, child actors I can always remember growing up with, like, like a Macaulay Culkin, or like when Jonathan Lipnicki did all those shit movies, and then Shia LaBeouf when he did Even Stevens. Like, this kid has been, like, on my radar since I was a preteen, like, so I want to see him succeed. But brother, if you're listening to this episode, I'm a fan, but you gotta stop your antics, like, you gotta reel that back just a little bit. And please concentrate on your career, because like, I'm not even joking when I say this, and I will throw this down as I would say 75% chance the guy's he's gonna win an Oscar. Like, he's going to. Like, the guy is crazy good enough for that to happen. He just needs to focus on it.
We're gonna be talking about how funny it was that he was in this show called Even Stevens when he was younger, and then he was in a couple of, like, robot and adventure archaeologist movies, and it's gonna be completely weird. And we, speaking of, child stars that we grew up with, we need to get Bug Hall back into movies, because I want to see that.
Okay. Joel's obsession with fucking little, Bug Hall, what was it, Alfalfa from the Little Rascals remake?
Like, I was Alfalfa, like, 2 years in a row for Halloween, so... You know what?
Whoa! Wait a minute. Can we? No. You can't move on from that. Let's go back to what you just said. So, are you telling me you had the fucking cowlick, spit curl, motherfucking piece of hair in the back of your head?
I did. I had longer hair when I was younger, and I did that. I have a picture of it somewhere on my profile pictures on. But
that's really embarrassing.
That's basically.
No, Shia LaBeouf, good for you. Stay out of the Indiana Jones movies. All right, so I'm gonna tie these next 3 up, because they're basically the same fucking thing that all happened within like 2 days, while Joel and I took a week break from news. So the first one, I'm sure everyone is just yearning for us to talk about, is the fact that Martin Scorsese is going to be producing, not directing, and Todd Phillips will be directing a Joker origin film for Warner Brothers. There's like a 50% chance it won't happen, because usually with Warner Brothers they announce shit and then nothing happens. But that dropped first. Then they announced that a Joker Harley Quinn movie was coming with Jared Leto and Margot Robbie coming back. And then people were speculating that Warner Brothers wants Leonardo DiCaprio to play the Joker in the origin film. Okay, so that's a lot to take in. So I will first say this. A Martin Scorsese produced, Todd Phillips directed movie about the Joker origin story. Do we need it? No. Do I want to see it? Fuck yeah, I do. A lot of people don't give Todd Phillips enough credit. And Joel's probably rolling his eyes, and that's whatever. We disagree all the time.
I think they give him too much credit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I probably do. All right, so I actually think that when Todd Phillips was starting out and he made his breakout hit Road Trip, it was a raunchy comedy, very basic. It's whatever. It's got Tom Green in it, if that has any indication of how good it is. He actually found his footing with dark comedies. And when you have like his Hangover trilogy, I like that whole trilogy, by the way. Yeah, that's right, even the second one. Is it a rehash of the first one? Sure, but it's still effective. He found his niche in dark comedies. And so after the Hangover trilogy, I was curious to see what he would do. And of course, he did Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. That's a decent little comedy. It's not anything to write home about. But I think what really impressed me about his directing the most was War Dogs. I absolutely Love that movie. Like, that was a huge surprise from last year. It got absolutely crushed at the box office. Didn't really make that much money, but he did that for Warner Brothers. He's pretty much been working with Warner Brothers since the beginning of time. And so War Dogs showed me a different side to him, because I saw a dark comedy with really great dramatic punches. And if he can kind of apply that to a Joker film and kind of have it in the vein of what I saw in The Killing Joke in terms of the Joker's backstory, it could be an interesting pick. Now, with Scorsese producing it, yes, he is not directing it, but if he is producing it in name only, then we will not have his influence. If he is hands-on with this, it could turn out to be a pretty interesting Joker origin gangster story. And yes, that sounds barbaric and asinine, but just keep in mind that actually fits the Joker's character in the time period of his origin story. If you have ever read The Killing Joke, or if you've seen the adaptation, you know what I'm talking about. So it's actually a very nice pairing of producer and director. That's right, I like Todd Phillips. Sue me. As far as the solo movie with Leto and Margot Robbie, I don't care. Suicide Squad is the only one I have hated out of the bunch so far, and once again, I know Joel and I disagree on that, but at least we can agree that Suicide Squad sucks big old dick. So I don't care about them. Yes, Margot Robbie was fine as Harley Quinn. I love Jared Leto to death, but no thank you on the Joker. And as far as Leonardo DiCaprio doing the origin film, I don't know. I mean, this project seems just too good to be true. You know what I'm saying, Joel? It's almost like someone like presented this like fantasy scenario, and we're all just kind of taking it and we're like, man, this sounds fucking awesome. But in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't think this is going to happen. And that's the thing with Warner Brothers. They're kind of like haphazardly just throwing projects on the wall and see what sticks and see what lands on social media. Clickbait sites. They don't really have a clear vision on what they want to do. And so that's why I don't really give much credence to this type of news, because they've been kind of sketchy in the past, and they'll announce, oh, a Shazam movie's coming, Black Adam's coming, this is fucking coming, you know, and then nothing comes. Yeah, honestly, I don't care about either thing that's happening with this, but if they do go with the Joker origin, like I said, do we need it? No. Am I interested? Yes, I am. And if Leonardo DiCaprio plays him, sure. Now, I was actually talking with my coworker about this piece of news, and I know that Willem Dafoe always gets casted as, you know, people with ugly faces and monsters and ghouls and stuff, but he's actually perfect for a Joker origin movie. But the only problem is he's too old. So if they're going to get someone younger, that's fine, but I kind of wish you would do like an older Joker film if we're going to go that route and kind of see, I don't know, just like a cranky old ass motherfucker Joker. So and get Willem Dafoe. But honestly, I don't care about anything with this. Like I said, Joel, it's hard to take Warner Brothers seriously when they pitch so much shit and then nothing is ever kind of followed through. So what's kind of like it rattling in your head about all this?
Well, with the Joker Harley Quinn thing, I don't care. I don't think we need it. I don't have any real desire to see an emotionally abusive relationship between psychopaths as the people that follow in the movie. And that's what it is. Honestly, it's fun comic booky stuff, whatever. No, actually, it's a thing about Stockholm syndrome, basically. The Joker origin movie. Okay, so Martin Scorsese producing it is very interesting. I think I heard somewhere that he's actually kind of a comic book fan. So perhaps that is the right hands to put it in. I don't think that this is worth his time. Really, he's got a few years left. Maybe this is his sort of attempt to, he's going to retire from directing and then maybe produce stuff until he dies or something. I'm not sure, but I feel like it's not worth his time. I don't feel like Leonardo DiCaprio would touch this with a 10-foot pole, so I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't feel like he would be down for playing a role like this. If they're going to put anybody in the role, you know what's coming. Bill Skarsgård needs to play him.
Which I am actually in favor of. That's actually not a bad pick.
Right. And I'll get into why that is. It's not actually because Pennywise reminds me of the Joker. I'll get into that later on. But here's the thing. It's the entire concept. And then Todd Phillips, whatever. I like Starsky and Hutch. I think I've seen maybe 4 of the guy's movies, and that's basically the one of those 4 that I like. I didn't see
Whoa. Wait a minute. So I'm like, he's. It's like I pitch all these like very successful movies, and you go to fucking mid 2000s with Starsky and Hutch.
Okay. Because it's fun. I was not. I mean, I didn't see War Dogs. That was one that I missed, and I'm actually sad that I missed it because it looked like it was a departure for him. But and I'll probably rent that. We have like 6 copies at work or something. I'll rent that because it does seem like it's a more dramatic turn, even though it's technically still a comedy, I think. But I know it's a more, Scarfacey kind of thing for him. And so I'll see that. But otherwise, I've seen the Hangover movies, all of which were awful. And, I've said it before. I think that I Love You Man should have gotten sequels instead of The Hangover if we're talking about 2009 comedies or Observe and Report or something. But I hated everybody in The Hangover. The characters. And they were not funny. I have to be able to like the characters in my comedies, at least a little bit, find something about them that is somehow redeemable or compelling, and none of those characters had any of that. Starsky and Hutch was fun, lighthearted, really like brightly lit instead of the grungy, weird cinematography in the second Hangover that made all of Bangkok look like it was
a dirty sewer.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the most xenophobic movies I've ever seen. Anyway, yeah, so I don't really care about that. But here's the thing. The entire concept of a Joker origin movie undermines the Joker. It misunderstands the whole point with the Joker. It would be like making a Pennywise origin movie. The point of the character is the mystique behind it. And that's why, you watch The Dark Knight, and even though somehow in the back of your mind you wonder, how this person became the Joker, you're not actually wondering that because you're really compelled by the fact that he's a complete unknown variable in the world. You don't know what he stands for because he's never clear about it. You don't know where he comes from because all he does is lie about it. He probably was a military guy. That's what I've been thinking ever since I saw that. And anything I've known about the character, it's like that. I mean, of course, Tim Burton's Batman put him, in a specific body of, Jack Napier or whatever his name was. The Jack Nicholson character was a character before he became Joker, but the kind of Joker that we attribute to the character now, we know of, and there's no background that we need to know. And so the whole concept of a Joker origin movie undermines the character. Even this particular Joker that we're dealing with right now, the Jared Leto one, we don't know where he comes from. We don't know, that's clear. It's because, and that's the only really compelling thing about him is the fact that we don't know where he comes from. So the whole concept of a Joker origin movie is bunk to me. I don't think that we need it, and I don't really particularly want it, even if it comes from producer Martin Scorsese. I think that he needs to do things that are worth his time, honestly. And this does not seem like something that's worth his time. So
yeah, it's one of those
years he has left.
It's one of those weird things because I completely agree with you. Like that's why, like, do we need it? No, that's what I agree with where it's like we don't need it because the Joker works as a mystery. He's an enigma. He is a cancer on Gotham. That is what's fascinating about him.
Yeah,
now,
and that's what we need to know about him.
Correct. But I will say, when I saw the animated Killing Joke or whatever, it does explain his origin a little bit and his kind of like backstory, and you can sympathize with him and whatnot. And it was well done for the most part. I actually didn't mind that adaptation, but as far as live action goes, yeah, I'm okay with just keeping it as this entity, kind of like Pennywise, and just kind of like cause chaos and all that stuff. So yeah, it's weird that I really don't want it, but if it's served to me with a Scorsese and a Phillips name on it, I'll watch it. I'm such a.
I will say, like, it certainly, when the news broke, elicited a response, because you should have seen my face when I read it. The headline of the news story that I clicked on, and it was just all these names. I was like, okay, Martin Scorsese, Todd Phillips, and the Joker. All right.
You're like, what? Cool, man.
Whatever. I mean, certainly if it gets made, I'll see it, and I'll see it with an open mind. If it's a good movie, I'll say that. Even if it is, Todd Phillips and something that undermines the point of the character. For me, it's like, we'll discuss this more fully with the review of it, but like Pennywise, the characters are kind of similar to me, because I feel like you picked up on it there with, he's a cancer on Gotham, and Pennywise is a cancer on Derry, the city in the movie, and I feel like the point of these, and they're both clowns, or they're both terrible, terrible things that are disguising themselves. They're terrible concepts disguising themselves as clowns. Mm-hmm. The importance of the concept is what it means rather than what it is, and so I feel like. That's why I feel like it would be undermining the point of the Joker, who exists as this unknown variable, to tell us where the unknown variable came from. It lifts the curtain on something that doesn't need to have the curtain lifted on it. Mm-hmm. And anyway.
Well, it's like equivalent to a magic trick. Once you see the illusion, you're like, man, that was really cool. But once you find out about the trick, it makes it look lame. So, yeah. So we got a couple more stories to go over before we get into a special Oscar report from Joel. And the next one, this fucking movie. The Westboro Baptist Church is probably the worst thing on the face of the planet, next to rapists and murderers. Yeah, there's going to be a movie made based on that cult. Yes, I said cult. And it's going to involve Nick Hornby and Mark Webb. Now, Mark Webb, as you guys know, has directed films like 500 Days in Summer and the not-so-amazing Spider-Man series. And also, Nick Hornby has written some pretty good movies, I would say, like An Education, About a Boy, and even most recently Brooklyn from a couple years ago. So, I honestly, the talent's fine. Even with Mark Webb's atrocious The Only Living Boy Living in New York, that was one of the worst movies I've seen all year. I still give him a shot whenever I can, because 500 Days of Summer is absolutely a delight. It's not the talent involved. It's the subject matter. So yes, we're going to talk about it. It is a controversial subject, for sure, because you're examining a group of people who seem very, like just fucking crazy. And so I think tackling this and really kind of blowing the lid on, cults, religion, and just kind of looking into it, to be honest with you, I actually don't want a fictional movie. I want a documentary. Like, I want someone to do like what Leah Remini did. And, she was a part of Scientology. She got out of it. And, of course, she did her, award-winning documentary series on A&E about the Scientology group. And, I find that stuff more fascinating when it's told in a documentary form versus a fictional form. But if they do this with this talent, it could turn out to be something special. I don't know how they're going to go about it, but I do love controversial subjects. I love controversial groups. I just love controversy in general, and just examining the psyche of these people that join this and who are some of the most hateful people on earth. So talent involved, it's whatever. They're both decent dudes, decent filmmakers, but It's the subject matter that definitely gets my engine revved up, Joel. I just I kind of want to see this pronto, but I still will abide by what I said. I want to see kind of a docuseries or more of a documentary than a fictional version of this. So, Joel, do you want to see a movie about crazy people in a cult?
Well, so here's the thing. This is why I included this piece of news. Several years ago, I saw a short film at the Dallas International Film Festival, one of a package called The Elect. I think it was called The Elect. And it was a 12-minute immersion into the church by these two directors who basically just kind of secretly filmed stuff inside the church for several days and then cut it into this short film. And it was a documentary in that it was a document, but there were no talking heads. It was just observation. And I was suddenly fascinated by this group. So I went home and I watched Louis Theroux's pair of documentaries that can be found on YouTube about the church, and then I just became kind of obsessed. I started following everything. Soon I found out that one of the members, Lauren Drain, had left the church, and it was a very contentious leaving. There had been a couple people before that, but that was the one that was the first really notable expulsion from the church. It involved her having been found in a photo wearing a two-piece bikini, and then it kind of turned into this thing because the church is so conservative. So I've been following their activity for 5 years now, and it's obviously very depressing sometimes, but it's very interesting because they've gone through a lot of regime changes. And the leader of the church, Fred Phelps, died a couple years ago, so it's been interesting to see and find out stuff about his final months, like the fact that even though he was the leader of the church, he was excommunicated from it a couple of months before he died. And there have been several other people who have been expelled from the church. It's basically going to be, even if it's a straight drama, it's basically going to be a thriller. Just not treated, even if it isn't treated as a thriller, it's going to be a thriller because this thing it's one of the most sordid tales I've ever heard. The specific subject of this movie is going to be Megan Phelps Roper's, she basically left the church one night with her younger sister, Grace, who they are the daughters of the spokeswoman, Shirley Phelps Roper, the one who goes on all the news shows. She got long gray hair. Anyway, this church is fascinating to me. They reside, of course, in Topeka, Kansas, or just outside something. And basically, just the nature of the story is going to, because there's a lot of stuff here that is incredibly dramatic. Some of it's tragic. There have been a couple of other. Libby Phelps, who was the direct granddaughter of Fred Phelps, and lives literally 2 miles away from the church in Kansas and has not spoken to any of them in years. Anyway, it's just a very tumultuous relationship between members who are growing up and realizing things about themselves, talking to people outside the church, recognizing their flaws, and then exiting the church once they're honest enough to tell their parents about them or the church leaders. It's all basically a family and then a couple of friends. And so it's going to be very interesting. I think that Nick Hornby's involvement is very interesting. He usually does kind of at least a little bit more lighthearted fare. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be interesting. I think An Education, which is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, that's a great film.
Yeah, that's a great movie. That's probably the most dramatic thing he's done. Mm-hmm. I would say. I haven't seen About a Boy, but I know it's a pretty straight comedy. And some other things there. He's an author, of course, too. Mark Webb was actually the one who jump-started all of this. He was the one who approached Megan Phelps Roper, and it's going to be based on her book that's coming out later this year, I think, or early next year or something. And it's all about her experiences. And it's apparently a very long book, and it's literally a dramatization of, or like not a dramatization, it's an account of her leaving, which took several years. So that fact that it's several years, I mean, it's great. And so there definitely have been documentaries, or at least, specials. So I would urge you to seek those out. I would definitely be interested in a docuseries about it, though, like a long one, because it's really interesting how it got started, the fact that Fred Phelps was essentially not like his later self at all before he started the church, and then there was a shift toward it, and it was entirely legal. It was back when he was actually on the right side of history, and it's very interesting how he then created a church that has been repeatedly on the wrong side of history, very much so. And now this family that has kind of warped into just a worse version of himself. Lauren Drain is actually not related to them. The reason that she's involved is because her father was a documentarian who went there to disprove the church and then became a member of it, which is interesting. So I think that there's a lot of material here if they basically tell like the whole story. It's going to be a long movie probably, but it very much lends itself to a cinematic treatment. So I've been waiting for them to do this for a while. And in fact, here's the interesting thing. So, and this is a bit weird. I'm actually friends with Megan Phelps Roper on Facebook. She's got this public account where you can just kind of, comment. You were able to friend her, and she did that. And so years ago, back when I first heard that she left, I sent her the trailer to the movie The Master, because I was fascinated by that movie, even though it was after I saw it, and I wasn't a huge fan, but I was fascinated by how it dealt with this kind of cultish thing. She never responded to it, but she did view it. That was, in the point right at the beginning of where you could tell when people viewed stuff on Messenger. And so I have to wonder if, and this is not like puffing myself up, but I'm genuinely have to wonder, like, perhaps, she saw that movie and maybe was inspired to write a book, and then, all this snowball effect happened with the movie, because I feel like this is going to play for a similar audience. It's going to be very, very much about this egomaniac who heads a church, and then kind of his constituents who exist below him, and he's very, he's a bloviate, obviously very problematic to say the least. So I'm just very fascinated by this, and I was excited to see that somebody was finally taking it on. And by the way, not only Nick Hornby and Mark Webb, I forgot to mention this in the notes, but Reese Witherspoon is going to be involved as a producer. So, and she was brought on after Mark Webb and Nick Hornby were. So that's going to be an interesting little creative voice, because she is behind some really interesting films quite often. So I'm really looking forward to this. And her movies that she produces have a lot of Oscar draw. So if this can be released in the fall of 2019 or something, then we could be looking at a major Oscar contender. And I'll be looking forward to seeing who they get. Obviously Megan Phelps Roper is going to be the main subject of the movie, so I'm interested to see who they get to play all these people. So I have to wonder if it's obviously not going to be an authorized account on the part of the Westboro Baptist Church. They'll probably want no part of it. But the thing is that the research process will have to involve talking to them, because you have to get inside their heads too. You have to get inside the church to see what it's like. And that's what, that little documentary thing that I saw, the short, was so good at, because I think that those directors understood there's no way to just depict behavior. You have to go inside and see them from the inside. And when you do that, I mean, it's amazing because they operate like a normal family. And so, they're really nice to each other. They joke a lot. They watch a lot of movies. You don't really understand that part of their persona until you get inside. So it'll be interesting to see how they capture that with, while also capturing the dangers of becoming involved with that kind of a cult. And yes, they are a cult. I agree. So, because it's a closed off community, and it's under one, leader. So, and now Shirley Phelps Roper has kind of taken over as the head of the church. So, it's going to be very interesting for sure. I'm excited to see what comes of this.
Yeah, no, and I didn't know Reese Witherspoon was producing it. I was actually really shocked when, I'm sitting in Gone Girl and you see her as one of the head producers.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit! So
yeah, she knows what to get behind for interesting movies, and this is certainly going to be one of those that is a conversation starter. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know what else is a conversation starter is our last piece of news, and that would be Mr. Ben Affleck. We had both Affleck brothers in today's lineup because that's just how we do. We got to keep it in the family, yo. So Ben Affleck is well known for playing that guy who's addicted to porn in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. He's done nothing else. He's a very obscure actor. Of course, he has directed such films as Gone Baby Gone and The Town, which is my personal favorite, and of course Argo, the Best Picture winner. And Live by Night was a little disappointing, but it is what it is. He can still bounce back, and bounce back he will by switching over studios and cheating on Warner Brothers with the mistress that is Sony. So he is in talks to direct a Afghanistan drama, and there's really nothing more to say. We don't really know much more. It's kind of like a secret project, but I think it's kind of cool that he's kind of switching over to different studios and trying different projects and whatnot. He doesn't have to adhere to Warner Brothers all the time. So him directing a movie kind of bouncing back from Live by Night, I'm all for that because, like I said, Live by Night, it had its moments, but as an overall package, when you compare it to his 3 other films, it is a humongous letdown. So I'm hoping he can kind of bounce back. Maybe after doing this film, he can kind of get back in his groove again because, he was doing good for a while. And then after Argo, I like him as Batman. But, once he got into this DC funk, he's really been kind of off of his A game. Like, you can definitely tell he's a lot more tired in interviews. Like, so I think he just needs to take a break from Batman for a little bit after Justice League. Go do this film, or I don't know if they're going to be, shooting the Batman movie at the same. I have no clue what the scheduling is, but I think if you allow him to kind of take a break from this massive pop culture character and go direct a film and really put his creative juices behind something again, I think we can get a reinvigorated, Ben Affleck. So I'm all down for this. So. Yes, bring it on. So Ben Affleck, please redeem yourself from Live by Night. So Joel, I'm assuming this is good news to you.
Yeah, I haven't seen everything that he's directed. I missed Live by Night because of a busy January. That's when it came out for us. And I still have not seen Gone Baby Gone, although I definitely plan to change that. But I liked Argo. I thought that was a really solid movie that probably shouldn't have won Best Picture, but I did like it, and I loved The Town. That's one of my favorites of that year. So really, I'm interested in whatever he directs. This is going to be called Red Platoon, and it's apparently going to star Casey Affleck. So, or they're thinking that. So that'll be interesting. He's going back to Casey Affleck, and. So yeah, I'm certainly interested. This is obviously timely to right now, even though we have a lot of other things going on. Afghanistan is very much still the elephant in the room.
I don't know if people know this, but if you guys are listening overseas, we're still in that fucking war. Yeah, quote unquote war for no fucking reason, by the way.
Yeah, I mean this started 14 years ago, or 13 years ago. Yeah, I mean it's very much still the elephant in the room. It might be shrouding behind another elephant right now, but it's still very much present. And so him, bringing that back into the forefront so that we can deal with it, that's an important thing. And I like the kind of the subtle reference of the title, Red Platoon, is very nice. Even though it's probably topical to the story, it's still, kind of announcing that it's going to be, I feel like it's probably going to be something like, an Oliver Stone movie, honestly, because everything in Afghanistan is so, dramatic right now with everything that's going on. It's going to be very interesting. I'm certainly excited to see where he's going with this. So I gotta catch up to his other two, and then I'll actually, be able to see all of his movies.
Yeah, I think especially if Casey Affleck will sign on to star in this one, you need to see Gone Baby Gone, because that was like a pure Ben Affleck directed movie where he was not in it and Casey was the focal. So please check that one out for sure. But yeah, that's it for the news, guys. Kind of a long news segment, but that's okay. We were gone for 2 weeks, so we would get into the trailers. But breaking news, Joel, the Oscars are around the corner. And you got some tidbits that you want to like kind of give to our audience. What do you got with the Oscars right now?
Yeah, so I wanted to take this time to introduce a new segment. It's not going to be every week. It may be every couple of weeks or something. But I kind of want to introduce a new, occasional segment where I just kind of talk about where the Oscar race is at. I want to incorporate this more into what we do, because it's obviously something that we give extra episodes to. You go through, the entire show with Terrence at the end of the year, and I feel like we need to have a little bit more of a discussion. So I wanted to add to the news segment that we usually do. Sometimes I'm going to do an Oscar news segment, and I kind of wanted to lay out, where we are this year so far. Because a lot of stuff has happened. We've had some movies that have come out that are getting major campaigns or major favorites to be, disruptive of the fall season when they come back around through screeners. And we've also got stuff being seen literally right now with the film festivals like 1, 2, 3 in a row, Venice, Telluride, and Toronto. Some stuff being laid out there that some have risen to the occasion, some have kind of dropped off the face of the earth with bad responses. And then we've also got stuff that has been seen but needs to be seen in the second wave of consideration with the fall festivals, and we've still got stuff coming out. So kind of wanted to touch base, tell you all where we are right now, and then I think we're going to check back probably about 2 or 3 weeks, see where we are after some of the dust is settled. But right now, what we're looking at in terms of what has already come out is that Get Out is a major contender. And this is pretty neat because it's a major get for Blumhouse. This will be their Oscar horse this year, I feel. And it's the first award screener coming and finally seeing it. People are taking it seriously, and I feel like that's good news because, honestly, like right now, my supporting actor and supporting actress winners are from Get Out. They are Laurel Howery, who played the TSA agent, and Allison Williams, who played the wife of the Daniel Kaluuya character, and he's pretty high up on my list of best actor considerations. So this is a movie that people are taking seriously. I feel like really for likeliness, it's going to be like a screenplay, and then maybe some acting thing, and then that's about it because it came out so early in the year. But it's not entirely impossible that this could get a Best Picture nomination because Silence of the Lambs came out in February of that year, and it wasn't the February of the Oscars that it won. It was the previous one. It was a full year before it won, and it still won Best Picture. So it's not inconceivable, but that's a major one right now. Fox is planning a huge campaign for War for the Planet of the Apes. They're sending out screeners. They're doing the whole campaign, road to the Oscars thing, and I really want that to happen because that's my number one of the year so far. It's the best film of the year by far. It's a masterpiece. It needs to happen. They need to break into awarding Andy Serkis with Best Actor because it's an amazing performance. and they need to start recognizing that motion capture is performance. Another one that surprised me just simply because, I guess it's not really surprising, but it surprised me with the level of enthusiasm for it, and that's The Big Sick. Is a major contender right now. People are seeing it and loving it. It made bank at the box office. That's what the Academy loves to see with this kind of thing. It's obviously going to get major Best Actress consideration for Zoe Kazan, whatever. I feel like Ray Romano needs to have some supporting actor consideration. Just get basically everything. This is going to be one of those things that if it's nominated for a lot of stuff, it's really like 5 things or four or 5 things kind of, but that'll be big for this movie. So that's sort of the 3 big contenders that have kind of broken out of the early parts of the year. Of course, we have technical category stuff. I'm not going to get into that now, but those are the major ones that are sitting on everybody's brain right now. And then we've got some stuff being seen right now that is taking over. Darkest Hour, which is Joe Wright's movie about Winston Churchill, is getting raves from people I didn't expect to love it. I will admit I thought the movie kind of looked generic and bland, but apparently it is not. Apparently Gary Oldman is truly amazing in this movie. He has basically jettisoned himself up to the top of the list of, this is the guy to beat for Best Actor. It's apparently just this fascinating performance to watch because he completely captures everything about Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill was a character. Like, I don't know, Chase, if you've seen archival footage of him, but he was he was a little weird. He was kind of a character, basically. And so, perfect character to play for someone. And that's apparently the word. And the honestly, this thing is getting predictions in just about every category. Apparently, the cinematography is amazing. It's Bruno Delbignon from Inside Llewyn Davis and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and Dark Shadows. He does really solid work all the time. It's apparently an amazing production design. There are more than just Oldman's performances. Apparently, Ben Mendelsohn's great in it. So this thing is taking over. It's kind of the best picture frontrunner right now. We've also got, kind of on the bubble is Mother. Black Swan is certainly the Oscars thing. Won Best Actress, was nominated for Best Picture, all that jazz. I feel like this might be something that's a little too harsh. I've been hearing that it's kind of like lurid and unfiltered madness in a way that Black Swan, was occasionally mannered. This one is apparently just completely insane. So I don't know if that'll really break through, but it could. It comes out next week, so we'll see what happens. It's a little early in the season for that one, but we'll see. Call Me by Your Name is a huge contender. That one comes out in November. That one's been seen variously, like at Sundance, and now a couple of film festivals. Lady Bird is a major contender as well in sort of screenwriters and actors kind of situation. Let's see, what else is there? So that's kind of the movies being seen. Suburbicon has dropped majorly. We felt like it might be a contender, but it was seen last night, I believe, at Telluride, and obviously it was the opening night film at, or was it? I can't remember if it was at Venice. I think that might have been Downsizing, but anyway, played at Venice as well, and it's not gotten really great responses. Same thing with Downsizing, actually. I've been hearing some disappointing things about that, so it feels like those might, use a bit of a boost later on if they are actually critical successes when it actually screens for critics properly in the fall. Oh goodness! So there's a lot of contenders that are falling out. This is how the Oscar race shapes up. Believe it or not, Once Upon a Time in 2009, Invictus and Amelia were both considered the top 2 contenders at the Oscars. for Best Picture, Best Director, all that. No one remembers Amelia. I do, because I'm occasionally woken up in a cold sweat from it. But nobody remembers Invictus either. I thought it was okay, but whatever. Believe it or not, those were the considered major contenders. And then what happened? Invictus was nominated for one thing, or two things or something, and that was it. So this is going to be interesting to see how this turns out, because we still have some stuff to see. Obviously, we have Star Wars. That might be a major contender in a lot of technical categories, like Force Awakens was. We've got The Disaster Artist, which has been seen, at South by Southwest, but it's got to be seen in this, wave of film festival consideration. And let me think. Looks like Last Flag Flying needs to be seen. We'll be talking about that in a second. And that's basically kind of it right now. The other bit of news is that we have some foreign language submissions, and these are always important because, when we talk about foreign language films, they have to be submitted by their countries to be considered for nomination. Last year, was a great disappointment in terms of the fact that The Handmaiden did not get nominated, but it wasn't even submitted by Korea. So, stuff like this needs to happen. And we've got about 8 major contenders, with 3 of them at the top. Sweden has submitted The Square, which won the Palme d'Or. That's from director Ruben Östlund, who made Force Majeure a couple years ago. That one missed out on the nomination. I feel like this one might have a stronger case. I've heard it's really funny and a lot of fun. It's a workplace satire or something. It's a high-end satire, I think it's called. In the Fade, which is from Fatih Akin, with Nicole Kidman and Diane Kruger. Won Diane Kruger the Best Actress at Cannes. That one has a bit of a chance. It's from Germany. Which is Mikhail's latest movie. That one is Austria's submission. So those are kind of the major 3. We've also had Switzerland, The Divine Order, Iraq, The Dark Wind, Hungary, Our Body and Soul in Belgium, Racer and the Jailbird, A Taxi Driver in South Korea, which I think is about to make its rounds in America. It was an early release for them, kind of coming around our country. And then Telma from Norway, which is kind of also making the rounds. It's, I think, opening in November for us. And that one's a weird from oh gosh, what is the director's name? Telma is, goodness me, Telma. I forgot the director's name, but it's a significant one. And anyway, that's kind of that's where we are with the race, guys. We've got Disaster Artist is kind of the major. It could be the thing that, the Ed Wood of this year, where it kind of gets in for some acting nominations, but it'll get a lot of consideration. And then Darkest Hour is looming over everything else, essentially, because I've heard it's amazing. So that's where we are, and I will come back with a more structured format later on. This was just sort of a test out, kind of, so thank you for humoring me. I know that I rambled a bit, but this will become clearer once, stuff starts closing in on actual contenders and things get, talked about. But right now, we've got, Get Out, Disaster Artist, and Darkest Hour. I feel like those are the big pieces of conversation happening right now in all 3 of the categories. The ones that are being seen right now, the ones that have been seen for about a year now, or the ones that's kind of waiting in the wings to take up the mantle. So that's where we are with the season.
And that is Joel's Oscar report. That was lovely, Joel. I enjoyed listening to that because there were some of those I forgot even came out. I was like, holy shit, that is correct. That came out this year. But yeah, so what about you guys? Let us know about some of your Oscar predictions. We are in the heat of September, so we're getting there, guys. We're getting close. So all right, let's move on to some trailers right now. Joel, I have to ask you a question. Have you ever, I know this is a weird question to ask, but have you ever been a bald Vince Vaughn that went to jail for some weird reason? I know it's like a random question to ask people, but like that seems like something people might do. So what am I talking about?
You're talking about Brawl in Cell 99. And yeah, I mean, I'm a bald, jailed Vince Vaughn every Tuesday. It's a standing thing. No, yeah, this one's weird. It's from director S. Craig Zahler, who made, I didn't see it, but he made Bone Tomahawk a couple years ago. It never actually opened here, I don't think, so I missed it, or at least in theaters. You know, obviously it's come out on DVD. I've never seen it, but this one, it looks really violent. It's about, looks like it's about this guy is he like a federal agent or a former federal agent or something, some sort of like, he's some sort of law enforcement official, and he's in jail now, and he's just, there's not really a sense of a plot here, but it's basically just, he's trying to survive, kind of, and it looks very dark and probably going to be sort of a dark comedy like streak in it, but it's got Vince Vaughn and Don Johnson and who's the woman in it?
Jennifer. Yeah, that's right.
Jennifer's in it as well. So yeah, this one looks really interesting. Very, very violent. It's obviously going to be very violent. The guy made Bone Tomahawk, and from what I've heard, that's basically like on the edge of torture porn. It's so violent. So I'm sure interested in it. It's stylish. I like the color hue being very dark and a lot of blue-green kind of a vibe going on there with it. And Vince looks certainly going to be serious Vince Vaughn rather than Four Christmases Vince Vaughn. So I'm excited for this one.
Well, I'm actually really offended that you automatically went to Four Christmases as the standout comedy of his career. You could have said anything, Joel. You could have literally said Wedding Crashers, and I'd be like, yeah, I agree. That's that Vince Vaughn, and of course you have True Detective Vince Vaughn. And speaking of True Detective, the problem with that series or that season was not the acting, it was the writing and the structure of the story. But with Vince Vaughn going on to that show, and I said this in the past, like, he's a pretty decent dramatic actor, and I'm glad that he's starting to kind of do more stuff like this. So now he's going to have his own Death Wish movie, and Punisher movie, and pretty much every other action movie we've ever seen with this one. So, you know what? It's going to be one of those, like, low-budget, like, VOD type of movies or whatever, and I'm sure Joel and I might get a screener. We'll get something to like sit down and see this. So, but I'm glad that he's kind of like venturing out and doing more stuff like this instead of comedies, because he had his heyday back in the day, especially with Owen Wilson, his comedic buddy and whatnot. Then when you look at films like A Swingers and whatnot, he's really good at kind of balancing like that comedy and drama and whatnot. He's good at what he does. It's just that he hasn't really found his footing in quite a while. But who knows? Maybe he's the next action star. I have no fucking clue. But Joel is right. This movie like has this like weirdo like blue dye all over it, and it kind of makes it look like a Smurf like jizzed on it or whatever. So it is what it is. It looks like a new Nicolas Cage VOD movie of the week. So it is what it is. Speaking of trailers that I had no fucking clue even came out until Joel said something in the notes, and that would be the current war with Eggs Benedict, Cumber, Egg Batch, whatever. And then, of course, Michael Shannon and Nicholas Hoult. And basically, this is the story of Edison and electricity, and Michael Shannon being in charge of, like, gas and being a capitalist dick, tries to shut him down, and Nicholas Hoult plays Tesla, and we all know how that story goes. It's kind of weird to see this trailer, not gonna lie, because as soon as it starts out, you're like, is this like the Imitation Game 2? Like, it just has like that Imitation Game vibe to it. Benedict Cumberbatch was also in that film. It looks fine. I would have, like, this is one of those movies to where, like, the trailer didn't really win me over. Like, yeah, I've always been fascinated by the start of electricity and how it kind of took over as, like, the power source and whatnot, and how it kind of fought against people like Michael Shannon and whatnot. I like that stuff. That's really fascinating history to be told. But the trailer was just kind of like, it was fine. It's definitely not the Michael Shannon movie I'm looking forward to this year, or even Nicholas Hoult or Benedict Cumberbatch. So it's one of those things to where like it'll probably be a decent watch, but who knows? Maybe people will watch it and kind of turn Joel's opinion like he did with The Darkest Hour, where it's like once people started watching it and they started praising it, then you can kind of get more excited about it. But these are three capable actors of possibly bringing a good movie. I just saw a decent movie at best, but I'm not going to lie, my boy Michael Shannon, you know what? Even if he's like in the worst movie ever, his presence always like makes me like just a hair more excited than what I would usually be excited about. So, yeah, looks fine. So, Joel, did the current war, is this one of those ones that's going to be on your radar, and like, are you looking forward to it, or are you just kind of like so, or you're like, I'll pass?
I saw this actually in front of Tulip Fever last weekend. And the thing that I'm most excited for is the fact that it's the cinematography is done by Chung Hoon Chung, who shot The Handmaiden last year and the movie we're reviewing this week, which is It. So I'm excited for that. The movie has a bit of a vibe for me of being kind of, I hate this word, I hate it, but the director's previous movie is making me say it. A bit kind of pretentious-y. The director is, what's his name? Alejandro Gomez Rejon, who directed Me and Earl and The Dying Girl. And I hated that movie with a passion. It had this really weird, obnoxious directorial style to it, and I just did not get along with it at all. And this sort of seems to have that same kind of, oh, look at all my editorial tricks. But I'm interested to see it just because of the subject matter. I used to be like obsessed with Thomas Edison history, so that'll be something to see for sure. And the neat thing with the Nikola Tesla showing up at the end of the trailer like he's Nick Fury or something was kind of funny. I had to chuckle at that, just because it's kind of underlying a rivalry that's very niche and would be difficult to understand to anybody who isn't a history buff. So it was very interesting that they went that direction.
No, it's true though, because when you're watching the trailer, it's primarily focusing on the conflict between Michael Shannon and Benedict Cumberbatch, and Joel's not even joking. It's like the last like two shots, the camera does like this weird like hard zoom in to Tesla. He's like, I'm a problem solver, and it's just like the current war coming. It's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, exactly. It presents it like it's like this big event action movie. And it's weird, and so it's a weird trailer, but the material certainly interests me. You know what looks really intense though?
Yeah,
is Hostels. This one comes from director Scott Cooper. I have not seen Crazy Heart, but I did see the two movies after that he directed, which were Black Mass, was his most recent one. I thought that was okay. Not a huge fan, but the one that I really liked was Out of the Furnace with Christian Bale and like a bunch of other people. Woody Harrelson. I think Willem Dafoe was in that one as well. And this one takes place in sort of older times. It's got Christian Bale as well, and it looks really intense. This one's probably not even coming out this year, but it kind of released because it's being shown at film festivals. It's probably going to be like a summer release next year. One of those smaller things because it's finished, I know, but there's still it doesn't even have a distributor yet. So I suspect it'll probably come out sometime next year. But this one looks really intense and violent and compelling. You got Christian Bale doing his uncanny American accent again. Just a lot of very, very intense stuff going on. I hear that in the opening scene, an infant is shot, so that's what we're dealing with. that can give you an idea. So yeah, it doesn't give us a lot to go on in this trailer, but it's certainly eye-catching, and the cinematography is gorgeous. So I'm down. Go ahead.
I was just like, I was waiting for something else, and you were just like, hey, yeah, it was good. No, and that's the thing with this trailer is it's more of a teaser, but it sets up the overall tone of what you're going to be expecting. So it looks like it's going to be kind of like this slow, gritty Western drama thriller, and I'm totally down for that. Christian Bale looks fantastic in it. Scott Cooper, I've never seen Out of the Furnace or Crazy Heart, but I will go on the opposite of Joel just for a hair up. That I liked Black Mass; it was fine, but the performance by Johnny Depp was absolutely disgusting and terrifying, and that totally made the movie entertaining. And Joel Edgerton, I actually thought gave a pretty good supporting actor performance.
I thought he was better than Johnny Depp, actually. But that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah. So I mean, like I've never seen Crazy Heart, which won Jeff Bridges his Oscar, and then Out of the Furnace. I've heard it's like this like cult hit. Like there's a small group of people like Joel and the people in Montana. They love it. So I not only seeing one of Scott Cooper's movies. Seeing the Hostels trailer just makes me just want to go back and rewatch his older stuff for sure. But this looks like it could be an Oscar contender for sure for cinematography, maybe even acting or directing or whatever. So I'm excited for it. But Joel's right; it's more of a teaser, but it definitely sets up what could be another great drama thriller set in the Western genre, and that's kind of fucking cool because I'm glad that Westerns are kind of making this comeback. I'm not a Western fan, by the way, but what I've seen in the past few years is just kind of like this resurgence of Westerns and how just different all of them can be, whether it be like a Tarantino and Django Unchained or The Hateful Eight, and be more pulpy, or have a more serious Western. Like Joel, what's been like more of a serious Western in the past few years? I'm blanking.
You have to go back pretty far, but Assassination of Jesse James.
Yeah. So stuff like that. So and of course, I know this isn't really. I don't know if people would consider it, but Rango is pretty fucking cool. Yeah. So I'm just glad to see this genre kind of. Come back and do its thing, because I'm willing to give any movie a shot. And I know Hostels is definitely like the type of movie that my dad would like. He loves his westerns as well. So Hostels definitely looks like a good old crowd pleaser, especially when you're killing an infant in the opening scene. So good for them. All right, so the next one, I believe Joel lost his goddamn mind when this one came out. So Lady Bird, this one is going to be I believe it already screened it. What was it, TIFF?
Yes. No, Telluride.
Or Telluride. So Telluride, yeah. TIFF, they're all within the same 2 weeks. Lady Bird is actually written and directed by Greta Gerwig, who is basically like Noah Baumbach's person to go to in all of his movies. I actually think they're boning. And then of course she's in some other kind of smaller films and whatnot. She's starting to kind of grow on me, where I saw Frances Ha back in the day, and she was cutesy, I guess, but she never really kind of gravitated towards me. But I'm starting to kind of become more of a fan. So now that she has been acting in all of these films in her catalog in the past 3 years, because it seems like she's been coming out with 5 movies a year, she's starting to go behind the camera, and now she has her first directorial debut and stars Saoirse Ronan, because I can never pronounce that. And this is a pretty simple plot. It's just basically Miss Ronan going to California and just kind of living there, and then kind of growing up, experiencing life, and going through the trials and tribulations of growing up and discovering who you are, being an adult, all that. What I like about the trailer quite a bit is it does have Greta Gerwig's funk on it, and I mean that in the best way possible, because when I think of Greta Gerwig and any of her performances in her movies or just her as a person, she's got that quirk to her. She's definitely unique as a person. She's got a unique voice. She does have that quirky indie drama comedy type of feel, just with her in other movies and just her in interviews. She has a unique voice for sure. and she applies that to this trailer. So the trailer is really well done. I can't wait to see it. I want to see what Greta can do behind the camera. It's nice to see her take herself out of the movie and just concentrate on the creative aspect. And a lot of people are saying that Ms. Ronan does a fantastic job in the film as the main character. So, yeah, all around, what a great premiere for a trailer. Been hearing great reviews, so I'm looking forward to it. So, Joel, can you explain to us the amount of excitement that kind of struck your little heart before you had a heart attack while you were watching this? Because, I follow Joel on social media like a creep. He doesn't know this, but I'm actually like a Facebook friend of his. He doesn't like to acknowledge it, but whatever. So I remember him posting when he saw the Lady Bird trailer saying that he really loved it. So, Joel, why do you hate this?
I hate it so much. I'm just kidding. I'm now going to spend an hour and a half describing how much I love it. No, honestly, this trailer grabbed me. Well, first of all, it's also from A24. We have to acknowledge that it's from the greatest thing ever. And this trailer grabbed me in a way that the Moonlight trailer did. And I feel like, in life there are some inevitabilities, and I feel like with the Moonlight trailer, the inevitability was that I was going to love it. Maybe it was less predictable that it would be my number one of the year before I saw it, but it was. And this just has that feel that this probably is going to be the thing that dethrones War for the Planet of the Apes. Everything about this trailer hit for me. I mean, it looks funny. It looks really sweet. It's got a great cast. Not only Saoirse Ronan, but the Laurie Metcalf. We're getting to see her again. It's actually a really good year for movies from A24 that pair Tracy Letts with an actress from sort of the 90s who has kind of dropped out of, constant time on screen. It was The Lovers, where it was him and Deborah Winger, who, has done a lot of acting over the years, just not lately. And then now here with Laurie Metcalf, who people will recognize from JFK. She was one of the investigators in the movie. She was also Andy's mom in the Toy Story franchise. So it's, that fact. There's Stephen McKinley Henderson, Lucas Hedges from Manchester by the Sea pops up in this. Timothy Chalamet, who is also going to be in Call Me by Your Name in the same month, is in this as sort of a bad boy version of himself, which is interesting. And it's just looks like this really wonderful drama that drama comedy hybrid that just hits all the right notes. It's a semi-autobiographical about Greta Gerwig and how she acclimated to her surroundings when she moved there. And it's just really, really just one of those trailers where every single thing about it was just kind of perfect. It captures the actors, it captures the tone really well of this meeting point between comedy and drama. It looks like the story's interesting, simply because of the personal nature of it, And so yeah, I couldn't get over that, and I just stopped watching the trailer. Or when the trailer ended, I should say, and I just felt this enthusiasm for a movie that I hadn't really felt since Moonlight. Thinking back on the previous year or whatever. And so, yeah, that's why it's just like between that and Call Me by Your Name, coming out in the same month, it's just super exciting, and I can't wait. So that's all. It's kind of a confluence of a bunch of elements that speak directly to me as a film lover. It's why I love movies. I love following stories like this, and I love Gerwig a lot. I was a big fan of Frances Ha. I saw that one at a screening, and I'm curious. It might be possible that we saw the same screen. Anyway, nevertheless, yeah, I'm a big fan of Taylor, generally speaking, and this is another one where unexpected people have loved it. Like people that don't usually respond to this movie, like Chris Tapley of Variety. He's over there. He usually doesn't respond to this kind of movie, and it's his number one this year. So that speaks to me that this is kind of one of the consensus titles this year. Pretty much people are going to love it, and that's about it. And that was how Moonlight for a couple of detractors who feel being just contrarians, but this is sort of a similar situation. And so on, and that's it.
All right. I'm just letting you know before we continue. Your end is breaking up pretty badly.
Yeah, you're breaking up too occasionally. Did you hear everything?
It was sketchy, but I mean they got the point because you said, "Man, this was such a great trailer," and then it started like going fuzzy, and I was like, "Well, people know." Can you explain to us another film, Joel, that good old Richie Lader is going to be bringing us?
Yeah, this is Last Flag Flying. It's a sort of kind of sequel to a 1974 or something movie called The Last Detail, which had Jack Nicholson. It was directed by Hal Ashby. I haven't seen it, but we have a copy of work that I'm thinking about just blind buying. But this one is about one of whom is bringing home his son's book, and it's just kind of about that trip. It's them. This is going to be Richard Linklater movie. Michael Scott and Walter White. It's got Steve and Bryan Cranston and Fishburne, and they are three friends who are the Carell character. Back instead of being buried at Arlington, he's going to be buried somewhere else. Carell is adamant about that. So this one looks really good and truthful and touching. And, I mean, it's just that way that it just, again, like Lady Bird, captures its tone well. And so that's Last Flag Flying.
Okay. And before we continue, Joel, I don't know if you want to sign out of Skype real quick or like turn off the internet and turn it back on because it's getting worse. Maybe Pennywise has infiltrated this episode and he's doing his thing. I just real quick on Last Flag Flying. I'm cool with whatever Linklater does. I really like the fact that, like you said, Michael Scott and Walter White are in a movie together. I never thought I'd fucking see that ever. But yeah, it looks like a very wholesome movie. It's going to really kind of rely on the chemistry between all three of these gentlemen and just kind of see their acting skills. And that's what Richard does best. He works with actors primarily, and he brings out the best performances in the in his actors that he's directing. Whether you want to watch like the Before trilogy and have Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy kind of like run the movie and like just showcase their talents, or when you think about Boyhood and see that collection of actors and actresses do their thing, that's what he does best. So he's constructing an emotional, character-driven story with three powerhouse actors kind of just doing their thing. So I'm looking forward to it. There's really nothing more to say. I'm a huge Linklater fan. I will watch anything that guy does. So
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
All right, so the next one, I don't need to say much about this, but this one's called Mark Felt, the Man Who Brought Down the White House. Liam Neeson, Watergate, based on true story of him taking Nixon down. I'm sold. The trailer was riveting, like what you would expect from this type of story. So that's all I got to say about it. Like it's very straightforward. He is, like I said, Liam Neeson plays the reporter that essentially starts the whole Watergate controversy and brings down Nixon, or at least starts that process. So yeah, looks great. Joel, what about you?
Oh yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. This is right down my alley. I'm fascinated with everything to do with that era of presidencies because of JFK, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, all of it. is very interesting to me, and especially is relevant to right now with issues of fake news and all that. It's going to be very interesting to see how that all comes out. I think that this has a real chance at being one of the better movies this year, honestly. And whether or not it's an Oscar contender or something that people consider to be a whiff and it just doesn't catch on, I think that the quality of the movie is what's most important, and I'm super excited to see it.
Yeah, and let's keep it real, guys. There is one problem I'm going to have going into it, and that's his accent. Liam Neeson is not from here. He does not have an American accent whatsoever. So anytime when he tries to play one, sometimes his original accent can kind of poke out a little bit. And so I'm just worried just a hair that his accent might not be consistent, but we'll have to see it in full. The trailer did a decent job of hiding it up, so hopefully that is not an issue. But Liam Neeson's a great actor, so hopefully he can kind of roll back. What is it? He's Irish, right? Joel?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if he can just roll back that Irish accent, we'll be good to go. So, Joel, Netflix.
Anthony Hopkins in that way. Anthony Hopkins, when he does an American accent, never gives it up. His UK accent. So,
yes. So Joel, Netflix has been on a roll, as always. They always pump out great stuff. BoJack Season 4 came out today. They are really great at TV shows, and occasionally they'll have some good movies that kind of pop up, even though I think their TV shows overshadow pretty much all the movies they've done. But they have this one coming out that looks like could be my favorite one they've ever done. Which one is this?
Yeah, this one is called Mudbound. It is from director Dee Reeves, who has kind of done solid work in the indie world. She's done a TV movie, so she's had history with the sort of meeting point that has now. She's done both movies and TV, and this one is an epic. It's probably like 2.5 hours or more. And it takes place in that perilous period between slavery and basically in the it's got this great cast, like Jason Mitchell's in this. We've got Jason Clarke as well, Jonathan Banks, a bunch of people basically. Carey Mulligan, she's been hiding out somewhere, and she's back after a couple of years away. And it just looks like this really intense story of, watching races in a period of time where there were no more slaves, but sorry, somebody's knocking on my door. So anyway, this one looks really intense, and I've heard that the cinematography is gorgeous, and it looks like it is. It's could be a contender at the Oscars, but I don't know. With Netflix, we're still kind of waiting to see on this. I almost mentioned this in my Oscar thing because it has been seen and admired, but with Netflix, it's kind of like, will they take it seriously? Because it is thought of as the streaming service still. So if they can get it into theaters and people can take it seriously, maybe it'll catch on. But we'll have to wait and see. Nevertheless, it looks great, and you're right. I mean, it looks like it's going to be the best or one of the best that they've done. This year is certainly they're expanding their distribution kind of network to movies that are more accessible to mainstream audiences. Like just silly sci-fi comedy. To the Bone is a drama about serious issues, and now this one is a drama about serious issues. So I feel like they're expanding their network of distribution to these kinds of things, and it's very interesting to watch happen. We're basically watching history happen with this stuff. So certainly looking forward to this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a very powerful taste of history, and the cinematography. When you watch the whole trailer, it just looks clean, it looks crisp, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. And I've always loved that contrast when you're doing films about racial profiling or slavery or whatever. Like, have beautiful cinematography in contrast to the horrors of the actual story. Like it makes for a more compelling watch, a more kind of like attention grabbing watch, and that's what you kind of want with these films. It looks absolutely wonderful. That's always been my problem with Netflix, is that the movies that they put their name on, I have either found just mediocre or not good at all. And their TV shows are so much better, and I don't understand why they don't apply that to their movies. But who knows? Mudbound might be the first one that will kind of break through for me and be like, wow, I could imagine myself watching that in theaters. Because that's the problem. Another problem I've had is that all of them, including Okja, always feel like a glorified TV movie. They've never felt cinematic to me. And so this one feels cinematic. It has that epic weight to it. That's what I really appreciate about it. So looking forward to that Mudbound. And you know what else I'm looking forward to, which came out of nowhere because I had no fucking clue that Joaquin Phoenix was even doing this. And this one, my phone just closed out, excuse me, is You Were Never Really Here. Basically, there's a little girl that's in peril. She's missing. Joaquin Phoenix is basically like the Liam Neeson and going in and kicking ass and basically shooting a bunch of people. So that's basically, it's just a like kind of like a revenge rescue story that looked really intense. It's directed by Lynn Ramsey, who was notorious for leaving the Jane Got a Gun movie and causing that fucking ruckus. But she also did that film, We Need to Talk About Kevin. I enjoyed that quite a bit. With Ezra Miller basically playing the kind of like origin story of like a psychopath. No, but this one, it had some of like the darkest and grittiest and kind of submersive cinematography in any of the trailers that we have talked about. I was just immediately just like thrown into this like seedy underbelly world that Joaquin Phoenix was kind of like traveling along in. I felt the dirt, sweat, and grime of everything. It had like such a presence with its kind of like universe or world building or whatever that I really kind of appreciated that. Joaquin Phoenix looks badass, and I really never thought he would be able to take up like a Liam Neeson role in Taken very well, but he sells it. There's a lot of interesting shot compositions and cinematography that highlight the violence in a very unique way. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And I've always been a fan of Joaquin Phoenix, no matter what he does. And I still contend to this day that The Master is the best thing he's ever done acting-wise. That is a performance, Freddie Quill, that I will always remember. He absolutely nails it in that movie. So Joaquin Phoenix is one of the best. He's very selective in his movies, but when he picks them, he really picks them, and I'm glad he was a part of this one, because this looks so fucking cool. So, Joel, what did you think about this one? Because this one kind of caught me off guard, so did this one catch you off guard as well?
I knew that it was coming. I didn't know that it had already been shot, though. I thought it was still in production. So it was nice to see a trailer for it. I know people have seen it who said that it's pretty amazing. And what's kind of amazing about it too is, you're right, I mean, it's got this really gritty flavor to it that has a revenge thriller with a lot of blood letting, and the director, Lynn Ramsey, she left the Jane Got a Gun project. She was she was attached for a while to like a sci-fi version of Moby Dick or something. That went under and didn't happen, and now she's coming back with this. She works very infrequently, but I've seen two of her other movies, and they were both really great. We Need to Talk About Kevin, like you said, and then one of the best movies I've ever seen is something called Morvern Callar from way back in 2002 with Samantha Morton, and everybody needs to go find that. It's on Netflix for DVD rentals. It's not on streaming, unfortunately, but it's worth the if you have that, it's worth the rental, because it's a moving film. She works with color a lot in her movies, and in an interesting way, primarily red. And so I'm interested to see, especially with bloodletting. I'm interested to see how that works here. Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, what else can you say about the guy? He's awesome. He's great at everything he does, I think, pretty much. I don't think I've ever seen a performance from him that wasn't committed. So I mean, I even loved him when he worked with M. Night Shyamalan a couple times, The Village and Signs. I love those performances from him, and I think that he's one of the best working. So this could be really good. I don't know if it comes out this year. Probably doesn't. I think it might be coming out next year, but I'm super excited.
Yeah, well, whatever year it's going to sneak in, I can promise you this: if it's as good as we think it is, I mean, Joaquin Phoenix could be in talks for a best lead. Like it seems like they're taking like no pun intended, taking the Taken kind of like formula and applying it to like a higher caliber art of filmmaking. So
high art kind of vibe, yeah, for sure. It looks a little more artful than something like Taken, which obviously is very mainstream, very straightforward. This is more like it's probably going to consider the situation, to be a little more dramatic than actiony. And yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of borrowing that to add some artful flavor to it, and she does that really well. I mean, we need to talk about Kevin adapted a novel that was a fictional novel entirely in first person. And it was like a what am I trying to say? Like a notebook. It was written like a notebook, like a person's personal writing, considered unfilmable. And she made that great piece of work about it. And I mean, yeah, she's a really good filmmaker, and I wish she worked more frequently than she does. But whenever she makes something, it's going to be interesting. And I got to see Ratcatcher. That's her first movie. That one's on Criterion somewhere. But anyway, super, super interesting trailer. And that one is our last one.
It definitely caught me off guard, but it was definitely one to, remember, because I was like, I didn't even know what the movie was about. I just kind of went into it blind, and I was like, oh shit, this is like a really high-end Taken, so that's awesome. So yeah, that will do it for the trailers, guys. So what was your favorite trailer? For me, believe it or not, I'm gonna go with the Joaquin Phoenix one. I think it's just because it caught me off guard. Like, I knew the Lady Bird trailer was gonna have that Greta Gerwig flavor, and it does. So that didn't really surprise me. I think because it surprised me in the best way possible. You Were Never Really Here is my favorite.
Mine is Lady Bird.
What a fucking shock!
Right. I know that's something you'll need to register for a few minutes. It's just everything about that trailer hit for me, and it was just a delight. So I'm super excited for that, and yeah.
All right, so so let us know what was your favorite trailer down below, and guys, let's get into it. This is going to be fun. So the main review that we'll be doing, and we went extremely long, only to tease you guys into our review of It, the new Stephen King adaptation. This has been adapted before in 1990. I believe, like I said, in November. So I was 11 months old when this came out. I didn't watch it, obviously, until later, but it's been attempted once before as a mini-series, but this is the first time it's actually come to the big screen. And Joel, before we get into our review, can you give a little bit about the plot?
Yeah, so because I'm a title literalist, this is actually called It Chapter 1, because that's what leads into the end credits, so I'm going to go with that. And it is really Chapter 1. It's the first half of the book. It's the one that takes place in the late 80s. And it was a different period in the book, but nevertheless, this one is about a town that has been seeing a lot of... I'm going to actually have to duck around a lot of details here, but the town has basically been met with a very violent and tumultuous past, and now kids are going missing and possibly being murdered, and they don't know by what or whom, although we find out immediately that there is lurking around the town a supernatural being that appears to its victims as a clown that calls itself Pennywise. So that's basically the pretty much the synopsis. It's not. I don't really want to go much further, but I will say that we follow a group of kids as they kind of, deal with the fact that there's a bunch of disappearances and that any one of them could disappear at any time, and they start investigating the various goings on, especially when one of their brothers is taken. And so that is the synopsis of It, Chapter 1.
Yeah, Joel is absolutely right. So, and this isn't spoiling anything, the miniseries was also 2 parts, and the movie series will also be 2 parts, which is an advantage and a disadvantage, but that's a little preview into what I think. But yeah, just to kind of just quickly for the older version, Tim Curry is entertaining. There's a couple of creepy shots, but I can tell you, as much as with all the problems I have with this new one, I still like this way better than the cheese fest that we got in the 90s. Was it fine for what it was? Sure. And I actually do like the first, like, the kid part when they were kids, and the camaraderie was there. It was like a Stand By Me coming of age horror film. That was fine. But the adults in the miniseries, no thank you. So that's kind of my quick thoughts on that. But I mean, Joel and I have been talking about this trailer for months now. I remember when the first trailer dropped for this film, I was super stoked. And so I had high expectations going into this. And I will tell you, this is going to sound really weird, but the way I'm going to word this, you're going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? This film is good. It's got good parts. I have a feeling when Chapter 2 comes out, I will love the entire story better than seeing it broken up, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of like my initial thoughts. Like, I like the movie quite a bit. There's a lot of great things I like about it, but there's also a lot of stuff that holds it back. And we have to address this because a lot of people, when they're reviewing this film, that I've kind of noticed online, like, yeah, they're hyped out of their minds for it. They fucking love it and stuff, but no one's really kind of addressing what I ultimately think hinders the film a little bit. But I still think there's some really kind of creative, inventive parts about it. But we'll break it down in just a hair. So Joel, I have to ask you, have you seen the original Tim Curry one? And of course, your anticipation going into this one, and kind of like, did you love it, like it, so, or hate it? And then we'll break it down.
No, I meant to catch up with the Tim Curry version beforehand, but I just had a really busy past month or so, and I didn't have time because it's super long. And I haven't read the book, of course. That's also super long, and I basically don't have any time to read anything at this point. So before the trailer, I was kind of, I had no feeling really either way. I mean, I know that it was a pretty popular book, but the trailer really sold me on the fact that it could be something special. So I was looking forward to it all, before I saw it. As for my initial thoughts, I like it. I have some problems too, though.
So it's like, just hearing the tone in your voice, I have a feeling, I'm just going to throw this out there, because Joel and I, we don't know what we think about the movies before we review them, so whatever you hear live is exactly what we're going to say, but I have a feeling we have the same issue, so I don't know, we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and start this one off and say, I'm going to go ahead and just say it right off the bat. The biggest problem is the fact that it's split into 2 parts, because this film almost does not even feel like a complete film, which is obvious because they are making 2 parts. What I equivocate this movie to is that it's a vignette of great ideas and scenes that almost feel clunky going up against each other. Because one of the major issues about this film is the tonal inconsistencies, where you might have like a serious scene of like abuse, or you might have like a horrific scene with Pennywise, and then we'll say like a stupid little quip, or we'll immediately cut to the next scene where it's like a comedic scene, and it's like, I think that's where it kind of falters, because it's a lot of material to cover, and I get that, and so you have to do what you can in part 1. But with us not seeing part 2 right away, it feels like half of a movie. and that is a major issue with it, because it's like I said, it almost doesn't even feel like a complete story. It's just like vignettes of, great scares, great little scenes between, the kids, or like great little scenes between certain kids and the adults. It never almost felt like a complete movie to me, even though I still like what was created in its craftsmanship. So I guess to flip to a couple positives real fast is, I don't understand, like, a lot of people are saying that Andy Muschietti, however you pronounce it, he doesn't have much direction in this film. That may be the case script-wise, but in terms of visual tone and constructions of scenes, I thought played out very well. I thought the terrifying scenes with Pennywise, and most of them, were very effective. I always told Joel this, like when the trailers came out, and you have the scene at the very end of trailer number 2, I believe, where he's in the fucking water and he comes up and then he flops towards the main character like a goddamn worm. That freaked me out in the trailer, and it still freaked me out in the fucking movie. So it's scenes like that where Pennywise is scaring the kids that I thought were really creative in setting up tension, making it unique in terms of not doing a traditional jump scare, but really adding flavor to it in terms of, beautiful, luscious cinematography and, editing techniques and whatnot. So I thought the actual scares with Pennywise were really good. Flipping to the coming of age part of it, which was basically these kids kind of growing up and facing their fears, I thought was handled pretty well as well in terms of Muschietti's overall attention to the kids and their chemistry, and making sure that we, can relate to them, we can gravitate towards them, and whatnot. And that will kind of play against it here in just a second. And I'm sorry that I jumped the gun on both. Let me get done with my positives first. I'll let Joel go, and then we'll do our negatives. But another positive, I like the fact they went dark with it. I was actually pretty shocked at some of the scenes that were shown to us. Like, it's very taboo to, like, kill kids in movies or, like, harm kids. They fucking go places, folks. And that kind of just added another level of authenticity for me, because I heard the book was pretty dark, and I've listened to the audiobook for the first hour and a half out of 45 fucking hours, by the way. So, but what I've listened to, it was pretty violent. The miniseries did kind of hold back a little bit because it was on TV, so for obvious reasons, they couldn't really go the extra mile. I like the fact that they kind of went hard R with it. The overall look of 1989 and the overall production design and the sets, I really enjoyed it. I felt like we were in this town. It felt like a community. I loved just the way everything looked. It looked super old school. It felt like this little town that you would just like kind of drive by if you were like on a road trip with your parents or whatever. So I like the overall kind of world building of the town, and also at the very end and whatnot, I thought that was kind of cool and creepy. So let's see what else. I mentioned the kids, and I will get into some of the negatives in just a second with the kids, but overall chemistry, listen, it's really, really hard to cast children in movies. I get that. But I think for the most part, most of the acting from the children were very well handled. I thought their chemistry bouncing off one another was handled very well. Whether you want to talk about them jabbing at each other like teenage boys do, or the fact that there's a couple boys that are into the chick or whatever, it felt natural to me. It didn't feel like they were trying too hard. Once again, I'll get into the negatives, but I did like the kind of progression as the film went on, and just their camaraderie and whatnot. I have a couple of issues with certain characters joining the group really fast, but we'll get into that. But overall chemistry between the main characters and really getting behind their actions, I found really palpable. So I really kind of gravitated towards them. And it was kind of weird. I will just add on a side note, it was very weird to hear Finn Wolfhard say the F word over and over again, because when you watch Stranger Things, it's like Stranger Things is not an R-rated show, but it's also not a PG show. It's like in between, and they say shit and stuff, but they don't say fuck. And so it was really weird to hear Finn just like, he actually says motherfucker in the movie. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, so that was kind of weird. And I guess another pro that I really enjoyed, and I'll flip it over to Joel, is Pennywise. Bill Skarsgård does an amazing job. You know what's really great about the design of the character? And I didn't even notice this, Joel, until I saw it on the big screen. When you're watching the trailers, you're like, oh cool, he looks like a creepy clown from the Victorian area. When the movie plays out, I noticed several things I didn't even notice before. One, he has rabbit teeth. I didn't even notice that. Two, his fucking eyes aren't aligned. His right eye is looking forward, and his left eye is skewed to the left a little bit. And I was like, dude, that's such a nice, like, little creepy addition to his character. I was like, that's amazing. That's wonderful character building that I didn't even notice in the trailers. But I thought the overall look of Pennywise was great. Every single terrifying scene that he was doing to scare the children creeped me the fuck out, especially the wiggling like a fucking worm in the basement while he's all wet and shit. Ugh, fuck no. But I thought Bill Skarsgård brought the kind of creep level to it. He brought the, just the Pennywise swagger, if you will, where it's like he's very threatening in certain scenes, and then some scenes, when you kind of let the facade kind of like wash over you like the kids do in the movie, you're like, it's not so bad. So like, he can have that like scare appeal, but also had that, kind of pussy feel too, where you're just like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of this clown. So, but I thought the overall kind of like intensity of his facial acting and the voice inflections of his dialogue were really well handled. I mean, because the whole Skarsgård family, they have accents. So Bill also has a slight accent. His is a little better than most of his other family members, but when he was like talking to Georgie in the sewer, and he's like, Georgie, like he had like this. He almost had like a Heath Ledger Joker, but also like like that circus you would see at Barnum and Bailey or something. So he had like a mix of psychopath and like friendly clown, and I really kind of enjoyed that. He had pauses in his dialogue that were really effective. Especially like in the sewer when he's like, Georgie, take the boat, take it. Like he would do like little stuff like that really kind of just added to his character. And the one thing I really hope for the sequel that they don't do in the miniseries, don't make him a goddamn spider. Just don't fucking do that, because then you're going to take away like a lot of the overall just kind of like character of Pennywise, and you're going to deflate it. So please change that up from what we fucking saw in the 1990s. So I think overall that's my positives for me. I will say this for the craftsmanship of the kind of like scare scenes, dude. Some of them were creative as hell. And Joel and I don't spoil anything, but let's just say the projector scene that freaked me the fuck out. And I was like, I know how they did that. Like they used the Honey I Blew Up the Kid method of post production, but that still freaked me the fuck out. And so stuff like that kind of caught me off guard, and that really kind of like just amplifies the entertainment of the film, because that's the one thing I will say before I flip it over to Joel. I know I keep saying that, but just as I'm talking, more stuff comes up. Another positive is the overall pace of the film. When your movie is almost damn near 2.5 hours, you kind of get a little hesitant and like, oh shit, it might drag a little bit. No, even with some of the story pacing issues in terms of character development, I was still entertained as hell. I enjoyed it from start to finish in terms of an entertainment level, and all the scare scenes really got my heart going, and I really just got into it. So as far as the overall entertainment arc goes, I was into it. It didn't feel long. We'll get into some of the story issues in a second, but those are my positives for the film, and I'm going to let you guys know right now as a disclaimer, I am battling on 2 grades right now, so as I keep talking and I hear Joel's side of it, I'll maybe decide on one, but I'll let you guys know where I lie when we get there. But Joel, what about it kind of surprised you the most? What were some of the positive aspects you can take away from this film before like I said, I think we have the same negative issues?
I think we might as well. So maybe except for one, I wasn't quite as annoyed by the fact that it's going to be 2 movies, because there is a lot of story here. If they had tried to fit it into one like 3-hour movie, it might still feel rushed. It's a big story, let's just say. But getting into my positives, so the overwhelming positive for me was Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. and also the character of Pennywise was fascinating to me. Both the fact that we never really learn, at least not in this one. I don't know if we maybe learn in the next part, but we never really learn the nature of this being. We get a few hints, or what seem to be hints, but we can't even really trust those. Partly because of a drawing in a newspaper that we see, if you know what I'm talking about. And partly because they're just really vague details. This town has a very violent past. And it seems like there's a generational element at work here that Stephen King was working with, specifically with the number of years between incidents, whatever. So the Pennywise character is interesting to me because of what he represents more than what he is physically.
Correct.
I feel like he represents much for these kids, and not just these kids, but the town as a whole, a point of shared grief that has literalized itself into a terrible fear, a terrible form of fear, and kind of put itself into a Jungian archetype of the scary clown. And I feel like Bill Skarsgård is effective at making this character completely inhuman. It's almost like we're not watching a human actor.
That's actually a really good point. Like, because you're right. Like when you kind of like replay the movie in your head, you're like, he never feels like a human being. He just feels like this weird entity that's just like feeding off of fear. Even
when he's talking semi-pleasantly with Georgie at the beginning of the movie, there's something off. We haven't seen his whole self yet, and we will before the end of that scene, very graphically. But even when he's just regularly talking, it's like this avatar of a human being trying to impersonate what it thinks a human being is. And I think that that's a significant achievement on Skarsgård's part, because that's hard to sell, and he sells it. And I think actually in some strange way that's the grounding element of this character. That even if he's this completely otherworldly being, he believably exists in the world that he's invaded. He feels like a natural extension on this town. It feels like this town is already so like torn apart by violence and fear that it would feel incomplete without him. And it's a weird thing to say about a character like this, but that's because this is a movie that I think it tackles a lot of things. Not just in the plot, but in the, like, underneath the surface of it. And, it feels like this movie it's basically how I put it. My review's a work in progress. It hasn't been finished yet. But my first sentence is essentially, and I'm going to just read it, the town in which the events of It Chapter 1 take place in a closed-off world haunted by a specter from the past, and then the clown shows up. And I think that's, where this movie rests. Pennywise is important as a literal version of that fear, but the fear extends far beyond him, or it. It's just, he's the vessel for it, or it's the vessel for it. I can't decide whether to call it it or he or what, because it's clearly a male ego, but it's not really. Again, it's not a human. It's not even anything that resembles a human. Even
Joel, I have a theory. It's an it.
It's an it. So, and I think that's why he's just so prominently the best thing about this movie. Is because he's able to sell this thing that is not a human, even when it seems like it's a human. It's very decidedly not one. It's the dead-eyed stare that very slightly shifts when it smiles. It's the drool on the bottom left of the mouth. It's that kind of sweet poison in the voice that, he's kind of talking in this light, happy voice. It's a happy clown, and then he lets it drop into this lower register that's really creepy, and it's got there's a growl and a staccato underneath it that's really compelling to listen to, and I just have to wonder how Skarsgård found that voice, honestly, like what he found in himself to make that, because I don't think that that's a computer thing. I think that's him, and it's just a really effective performance and an effective character as this thing that pops up in the lives of these kids, and those lives are already rent by fear and panic, and it's completely separate from him. It's sort of like he's the salt on the wound of what's really scary, and he represents what's scary, but really in a very fascinating way that makes him crucial. He's not even important to what's scary. He's crucial in this story, but in terms of what's scary, he's secondary. And that's what I like about the character. I think that it makes him very compelling, and that's why I love Bill Skarsgård in this movie. Other positives. With the kids, I actually disagree. I don't think that there's a bad performance here.
Well, I'll explain myself when we get to it.
Okay. Because I think, well, first of all, Jaden Lieber is great in the role as Bill,
yes.
the older brother of Georgie. He has this stutter. It's maybe not quite believable as a stutter. My dad is a stutterer, and also there's a moment where he says the F word and he stutters during it, and it's actually a scientific fact that you cannot stutter when you curse. That was kind of a direction thing more than him, but nevertheless, he was really good in the role. He's having to have a lot put on his shoulders. It's a very demanding role for a kid. Honestly, and the girl Sophia Lillis, I think, or something, plays Beverly in this movie, and is obviously, I mean, we can get into this later, but obviously Jessica Chastain is going to play that role as the adult, right? I mean, that's gonna be what happens. Anyway, she's really good. I thought that her subplot was not great, Bob, as the kids say, but I thought that she handled it well. There's a lot. It's another brave role. It's one that asks a lot of her as well. I thought that I'm just kind of reading. I don't know these kids' names yet, but the new kid on the block, he's really good in this. The new kid on the block joke, by the way, when he meets Beverly, was just about funny. Jeremy Ray Taylor, that's his name. Ben is of a certain size, and he's feeling very, he's new, he's not sure of himself, but he's very smart and very observant about this place's past, and he delivers a lot of information. There was also, as you said, Finn Wolfhard, who's the comic relief here. He's kind of the foul mouth of the group. Jack Dylan Grazer plays Eddie, whose mom has kind of made him into a hypochondriac. And I mean, it's just a really solid selection of kids here that Muschietti picked to play the kids. And so I don't think that there's a weak performance. I do agree that there's a couple of kids who get the kind of the shaft in terms of screen time and development, especially the kid who works on the farm, the son of the rabbi. A couple of them do get the short shrift in terms of development, but they still feel like they're part of a group, and so that's another positive. I think that they handled the coming of age elements really well here. The what it kind of reflects in what the town's going through is very interesting because it's very much connected to that. The adults in this closed-off world are oddballs, to say the least, and we kind of get this whiff of kind of kids kind of hating the parents, but it kind of puts a literal attachment to why they might. whether it be, an abusive relationship or something where they've been forcing, medication on their kids or what have you. It's sort of reflective of perhaps the parents when they were kids went through the same thing and did not come out of it so well. Because, we have to pay attention very closely to the amount of years that takes place between each of the incidents. And that's another thing. That's why I think there's a generational element to the narrative that's really compelling. And, that these kids aren't the only kids who have gone through this. And that's a very interesting idea. Maybe not very well fleshed out. And I'm going to get into that in my negatives. But nevertheless, I think this movie does work to juggle a lot of things in its narrative and its thematic concerns in the cast, and so those are my positives. And then production-wise, I think it's actually kind of perfect.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's a little bit of CGI that's kind of obvious and annoying or whatever, but it still fits. You think of the projector scene. Mm-hmm. The slide projector scene will probably be talked about for a while. And actually, if you think about it, nothing about that scene should work, mm-hmm. but it does, because it's primarily a big, gigantic visual effects thing, like in a very jittery fashion coming towards the camera, but it's still effective. Mm-hmm. And the cinematography is gorgeous. Like I said, this is the cinematographer of The Handmaiden, Chung Hoon Chung, who does a lot of. He works with a city where it's not very well lit. Let's just say that it's not a city that lends itself to a lot of light. But he does play with that a lot, especially when it gets to dark scenes that must, there still has to be. You have to play with light elements in the scenes, and he does that really well. I'm thinking of the scene in the room with a bunch of clown dolls. I thought that was stunningly lit. That's actually some of my favorite cinematography this year. And usually when you see that scene, it's just dark and that's it. And here it's not that way. And I just think it's picturesque or picaresque, whatever, around the town, which, like you said, seems just like this small town that you drive up on. It honestly looks like a lot of the elements look like I don't know if you've ever been out there, but Saxe. I don't know if you've ever been out to Saxe here by Plano, but it looks a lot like Saxe, and that's kind of inside baseball Texas stuff, guys. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's just kind of this small town, and the production design is really solid, especially when they have to incorporate some weirder elements like the inside of let's say the inside of a well house, and the inside of the house that's on top of it, mm-hmm. and the outside of that house, and it seems like a Monster House. You remember that animated movie Monster House? It's mm-hmm. like that house come to life. That's immediately what I thought of, and I know elements of Monster House were actually inspired by Stephen King books, so that makes sense. And so, yeah, I mean, those are my positives. And then,
yeah. And just to comment on the cinematography, I forgot to mention that in the positives. It's really well done. Like all the scare scenes that have Pennywise attacking the children are so well done with cinematography and lighting. I will bet your ass that these sequences will be used as tools to show you how to construct a very creative jump scare or a very unsettling, disturbing, horrific scene. And I thought those kind of matched out very well. And then to go on what you said about Jessica Chastain, I said this when the movie ended, and I still live by it. Listen, I don't know who they're going to cast as the adults, but they got a lot of shoes to fill because these kids did a fucking awesome job, and you have to follow that. Now, I will say on the casting just real fast, I don't want them to hire any big names because what was great about the kids, the only two I knew were Jacob Lieberher and Finn Wolfhard, and even then, Jacob Lieberher is only in smaller films, and then Finn Wolfhard is well known for Stranger Things, but that's about it. Everyone else, I never even heard of in my life, so I want them to cast unknowns for the most part. when they're adults, but that's another story. So I'm going to just jump into it for the negatives. I thought some of the tonal shifts were a little too abrupt, where it would like I said in the beginning, they almost felt like really strong vignettes, but never felt like a complete story in some scene transitions. Like, for instance, the basement scene where he's slithering like a fucking worm. He goes towards Bill. Bill goes up the stairs. He flops on the ground, Pennywise, and he just kind of slithers back. And then it does a hard cut to the scene where like they're talking about something else, and it's like that never really felt like a good transitional pull for me. It felt like super jaded, and I think the next scene was like something kind of funny. So it was like I thought the shifting between comedy and horror, it worked sometimes, and then it didn't work for other times. Because as much as I liked Finn Wolfhard's foul mouth, and he was the kind of like the foul one of the group, it did feel like he was trying a bit too hard. Like he was trying so hard to be a teenage boy that the writers were just like, oh, he's gotta say like all these your mom jokes and stuff. And I get that. Joel and I were young. Like, I acted like an idiot when I was a kid too, but it almost felt like they were trying a little too hard with that. And speaking of the kids, I will say it, all the kids were great, Joel, except for one. And that would be, I pulled up his name here, and it might have been because of a story issue, but I thought it was a line delivery issue, and that would be Wyatt Olaf, the guy that plays Stanley. I thought his line reads were very wooden. Like, it never felt like once he got into his character. Now, his scenes with Pennywise were fucking great. The painting is so awesome. Yeah. But his overall character, yes, story-wise, was not developed that well because we only knew one aspect about him. He was Jewish. That was it. But, and I realize in part 2, we'll probably get to know a little bit more about these characters, but as a standalone part, not only was his character completely just, shat on, but, like, I didn't feel like, I wasn't feeling it from his line delivery. I felt the chemistry that he was with his, friends, like, they grew up together and all that stuff, but I never felt like he was a good enough actor to kind of go up against, like you said, like Jacob Lieberher, who had a wonderful arc as a character where he was a kid that stuttered, he got bullied around, and when he has this, epic conversation at the end of the movie where he's standing up there, like, talking to them and whatnot, like, I felt like he was a leader there. I felt like he had completely changed and, like, he wants to better his life. That is what I'm talking about. Like, that was a wonderful arc, but then again, he was the main kid. But then when you look at kids like, who I'm talking about, Stanley, he had very few lines, like you said. He kind of got backseated, kind of like with Chosen Jacobs, who plays the kid that was on the farm that had to fucking kill goats. He had some really good, like, facial expressions and whatnot, but once again, like you said, kind of got backseated a little bit. So, but he actually had a really great monologue in a park that I really enjoyed. It's just this one kid. It's seriously just this one kid. Everyone else does a really good job to really kind of enunciate their characters and how they're different from one another. Because that's the problem that you kind of run into when you have groups of people, that there might be a couple people that seem similar. No, everyone seems completely different. And that's great, because that way, like, when they're in this group, you can pinpoint out, like, oh, this is the kid that likes New Kids on the Block. He's a little chunkier. There's Finn Wolfhard. He's the foul mouth. There's the leader. He kind of stutters, and he's really into Beverly, and she's this damaged individual who's kind of growing up too fast, but she's got a mind of her own and stuff. So I appreciate different personalities and whatnot, but the Jewish kid, and I hate to just call him the Jewish kid, but that's literally all we know about him. I'm serious. Like, there's a couple scenes with him in a synagogue, and then he's with them at the end. And it's like, okay. So there's that. I thought the bully, I thought his arc was rushed. Like, really rushed. Like, I understand that, like, when you're a bully, you're kind of a piece of shit, and, like, you have a terrible household and whatnot, and that's fine. But it almost felt like just this huge shift in his character at the end that just had no progression. And that's maybe because this film's purpose was to just plop you into this town and already be involved with these kids' lives as if, they've been around for a while and whatnot. And, like, that's established kind of, but it's like, I mean, he's progressed very fast. And that, I didn't really buy that. Other than that, like I said, you know what's really interesting? Like, if you take out all the scare scenes and take out all the coming-of-age scenes and the comedic scenes, they almost seem so different from one another. Like, all the scare scenes, like I said, they almost feel like horror vignettes kind of trapped inside this coming-of-age body type of deal. And that can be a slight problem because when you watch how the horror scenes are constructed and the jump scare sequences, they're lit beautifully, they're shot beautifully, they're expertly directed and edited with sound design and music. And then all the other scenes, like, they're good and all, but they almost feel like secondhand to the jump scare scenes. So that might just be nitpicking. But I think the main issue I have, like I said, is I want to see part 2 like right away, because the thing with the Tim Curry version is you can watch all 3 hours at once, and that helps the story. It feels like this epic story filled with these characters that you can kind of hold on to, but splitting this movie up into 2 parts does kind of hinder that character development just a hair in this one, because we won't know more until part 2, where a lot of these these kids are going to grow up and we'll probably know a little bit more about them and whatnot. But as a standalone, some of them do get backseated, and that's very apparent. But that's just more of a script issue. That's pretty much it for negatives. I might be nitpicking, but Joel, what about you? What about some of the things that just didn't work well for you? And I will say this, even with my negatives, rewatchability is a huge factor for me. I want to see this movie again right away. So, because I want to learn more about the craft of some of those jump scare scenes. I also want to just see if I maybe missed something or whatever, but I do want to see it again, so that does affect my grade a little bit. But Joel, do we agree on some things? Do we disagree? What's going on over there?
Well, no, we pretty much agree on this. I think that you're right with the tonal thing, where it kind of jumps all over the place, and it's a bit of something to do with, I think, the structure, which tries to. I think what it's doing is it feels like it's summarizing.
Yeah.
Really, it feels like it's summarizing a lot.
Like
where
cliff noting it.
Yeah, where it's kind of jumping, through different scenes and ideas, and so one minute we're getting the abusive fatherly relationship, and then the next thing we're getting a bunch of quips from the nerdy kid who's making jokes about his genitalia that's just gets old after a while, and all that, and then it jumps to a Pennywise scene, and so I think that it's just kind of jumping through each scene, and so in that way I feel like the structure is a bit clunky, and that's of course a script issue. I think that it did have a lot of writers in the room. It had an initial screenplay by Chase Palmer and Cary Fukunaga back when it was going to be directed by Cary Fukunaga. And then it had a rewrite from Gary Dauberman. And I feel like probably that process kind of confused. And so we get a lot of ideas here that are compressed. It feels like this one, I honestly feel like if they went the 2-movie route, then both sides should just be 3 hours. Like, give us a little more time with these characters rather than just moment after moment after moment without pause. And because it's a little frustrating how directly, like, just kind of without much consideration for the pace of each scene, it's considering the pace of the whole movie. And it wants to get through a lot of information in a relatively quick amount of time. And it is a lot of information. I mean, this is not just, a movie about a scary clown. It's got a lot more to it, and a lot of things informing the horror in this story. And I feel like it maybe needed more time. Maybe an actual miniseries, like not the 2-part thing, but episodes, like an 8-part thing. There's enough material there.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I actually think this would fare better as, like you said, like what Stranger Things did, and did do an 8-episode series. Like, I think that would be perfect.
absolutely. Just no season 2 or something. Just do the
Yeah,
whole
exactly.
series,
Yeah,
4 episodes with kids, 4 episodes with the adults, and then we've got the whole thing. So I think that could have worked, and here it feels a little compressed, and so that's why. Yeah, I think that we might have the same grade. I'm not quite sure what you settled on, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that we have the same grade.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm very conflicted because you know what's really funny about what we're gonna grade part one is when part two comes out. If it's just as
it'll certainly
magical as this one, I'm gonna change my grade and do it as a whole because
yeah.
I'm
I
grading a
mean,
half and
it'll
it
kind of
almost feels like I'm cheating.
it'll kind of force that kind of reflection because uh, Kill Bill was sort of the same thing where the first part on its own felt a bit cut off at the end, and it was because it was cut off into part two, and then part two, or volume two, I should say, kind of completed the arc. And so when you look back on volume one, you realize how special it was, but with the knowledge of volume two that provides. And so this feels like it'll be the same thing where we'll get this, troublesome but entertaining first half, and then when the second half comes and you know completes the arcs and provides all the information that we're missing right now, that's when it'll settle, and the first part will realize maybe it's a little bit better than we think right now.
Yeah, I mean
And
it's
it's
very
kind of just,
possible that when the sequel comes out,
yeah.
and if it's really good, I might just grade it as a whole because I'm telling you, like when you watch this one, you go, "Wow, that was really good," but it feels like it's missing something. Oh yeah, it's only one half of a story, so
Yeah.
it's
Hard
really
to see.
yeah,
It's hard to see the whole right now because, of course, we don't have the other half made,
correct.
and
So
and
I
so
I don't I honestly don't know where I'm gonna lie with it. Like I I I will say this, and I think this is why I'm gonna edge the grade up. I honestly think these jump scare scenes or all these Pennywise scenes will be taught in a horror film making type class on how to shoot, light, direct, edit a jump scare properly and make it into like a high art. Because I was actually really impressed, especially with like oh shit, I forgot the character's name, but Chosen Jacobs, the goat killer. Joel knows what I'm talking about, but his Pennywise scene, that like caught me off guard on how well it was done, and like the way that shot was composed and lit with the shadow of Pennywise behind that plastic curtain. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. These Pennywise scenes are so well constructed that it kind of overshadows the whole movie, but it's not a big deal. But I will say that those scenes are so well done, and they will be taught in classes, that I'm going to edge my grade up, and I'm going to do a solid B minus. Now, I was actually ranging in the B's for the whole time I was watching. Like, this is definitely a B plus film, but I think with all the tonal issues, that one kid that I really don't care about, some of the arcs that do feel rushed and, like you said, compressed, I got to dip it down. So I think a solid B minus is cool with me. And when I see part two, and if I love it, I might just like average out the grades. And I don't know, if part two is so amazing and I give it like, a high like A or A plus, I might just average it out to a B plus or an A for the whole damn thing, because like it's just so fucking hard to review a half of a story. So, but I think a B minus is what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, we do have the same grade. Mine is a B minus as well, and and it's sort of one of those things where critic friend, when I asked him what he thought of it, it's basically like this movie in microcosm. He just said mixed, leaning positive, and that's where I am. It's not a great movie on its own that we have to watch this movie and judge it. It's half a movie, but we've got this to deal with, and with this, it's I was in the same boat. Whenever I initially came out of the movie, I was a lot more positive on it. I gave it a night's sleep. I got up and thought about it a little bit before I started my review, because there was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really effective elements here that kind of come together in something that is a little less than its parts. And So I'm at a B minus as well. I think that really like the craftsmanship and Bill Skarsgård make it worth seeing.
Yeah.
But
I think you and I can agree. If Bill Skarsgård wasn't as good as he was, I would dip it down to a C+.
I mean, it would be just like this scary clown, and he makes it so much more than that through the nature of the performance of him trying to make this thing that's just not human completely inhuman. It's one really good, really 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 creepy performance that elevates a movie around it, and there are just a lot of clunky elements here that hinder it from being higher, like you said, but certainly worth seeing. I think that it's
for sure. If you're a fan of the book, fan of Stephen King, fan of horror, like I would advise anyone to check this out, because I was actually telling the people I saw it with last night, Joel, I don't know if you agree with me, but like I think Warner Brothers actually marketed this to perfection, because they used all the scare scenes to lure you in, and I was in a crowd with a bunch of probably stupid teenagers, and the fact that when people have never even read the book realizes this is not a movie about a scary clown, this is a movie about kids growing up and the fear of growing up and the daily fears that kids have, and
the literal monster that is created from that.
It's genius, because you get the scary Pennywise scenes, but you get more, and I think that will shock people when they realize that it's a deeper story.
You get the creepy painting, you get the let's just say a figure outside a house. Oh my gosh. The weird thing in the library basement. I mean, it's just it's all of that. It's all of that stuff, and all of those, by the way, the weird creatures that come up. Interesting little factoid. So the director, directed Mama a couple of years ago, and the actor who played Mama, who was the physical, the actor who played Mama, played all three of those. And he's one of those physical actors, sort of like Doug Jones, except apparently more limber. And he did a really good job. And that's Javier Botet, who is just really good at what he does. And I mean, it's one of those things where they did market it to perfection because they appealed to the mass audience, but they were hiding some of the weirder scares.
Yeah.
That are in store for people here, because there's some weird stuff in this movie.
Yes, there is.
And really weird. Like, I don't even know if I can sell it enough that the scenes we're just describing involving weird creatures, some of the most, just the oddest, like, concepts for scare scenes I've seen in a while. I mean, this is like weirder than anything in The Shining. And or anything in any other Stephen King, book or anything that I've read. I mean, it's just so odd and fun too in those scenes, I think. But I mean, man, it's.
I will say that this movie is in the lead for some of the best creepy imagery I've seen all year, so I will give it props on that. It's definitely in the lead for that, because there was a couple shots to where when I was leaving, it just ingrained in me, and I was like, that's what a movie's supposed to do. And so I really give them props. So it looks like Joel and I are going to go with a B minus. I highly recommend it, still, even with the flaws, and Joel as well. There's some very creative stuff in there, and I can't wait to see part 2. And the adults that they're going to cast, I feel sorry for them, because they got some big fucking shoes to fill. So yeah, what did you guys think of It Chapter 1, the 2017 rendition? Please comment down below off faces and let us know. So Joel, before we wrap up, since we're not doing box office results, I will say that the Thursday numbers came in. It had 13.5 million. So I'm letting you guys know this right now. This movie's going to fucking blow expectations, because a lot of people are speculating the number's going to be around 60-ish. Nah, fam.
Yeah, no, it'll be near 100.
It'll be near or actually over 100, which is actually amazing for a horror film. So, good fucking job.
Yeah,
Jesus.
The budget on this is $35 million.
Oh, dude, they're going to make that twofold in its first weekend.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I mean, they're obviously going to make another one, and I can't wait for that, because it's just so weird and fun and interesting. Oh, by the way, let's also talk about the score, because the score is amazing.
The score is really good.
Really good. This guy needs to just compose scores for every horror movie from now on. But yeah, really good news for Warner Brothers, because they've been having a rough go of it lately. And now, with 2 horror movies in a row, this and Annabelle, they're doing well. They know how to budget horror movies, and they know how to market them. I mean, and you talked about the perfect marketing. They played, as you saw, the first 8 minutes or whatever, the opening scene in front of Annabelle. I mean, talk about a perfect opportunity. And then the trailers, again, they appealed to the mass audience. They brought out like pictures, at just the right time to get to whet the appetite early on. Mm-hmm. It was just the perfect conference of great marketing strategies, and they killed it. So
yeah, like I said, regardless, even if like this movie was subpar in Joel and I's eyes, or like even if we like almost hated it, I still want to see the sequel. I still want to see where they go with it, because who knows? Like I said, when we watch the sequel, it might change our complete overhaul of what we thought of part 1, and I can't wait, Joel, until part 2 comes out, to where either if I get both of them on Blu-ray or whatever, or if they screen it in theaters to do back-to-back, I want to see both back-to-back. I think that's going to really help out. So, so that is a review of It Chapter 1. So, Joel, we had a fantastic episode this week, so where can the people find you online so they can continue to follow you like Pennywise?
Well, Pennywise, I hope you're following me. I love you, man.
I love your work, dog.
I love your work. I don't know if I want to float right now, but maybe later. And you can keep the boat. It was ugly. Okay. I'm just kidding. You can find me at joelonfilm.com. My reviews this week are sort of, they're on the horizon. I just haven't finished them all yet. But I've also got, I gave this 3 stars. That's coming up. I also reviewed the very interesting and surprisingly fun Tulip Fever. I'm still finishing that review. That'll be up later today. I gave that one 3 stars as well, surprisingly enough. So I'm going to be that guy who liked Tulip Fever, but whatever. It's weird and interesting, and it's been chiseled by months of delay, or years of delay, really, into something that was surprisingly entertaining, I found. And then I also reviewed Viceroy's House, which that one and the next one were joint reviews for DallasMovieScreenings.com. And Viceroy's House was a dramatization of the partition between India and what would become Pakistan. It was okay, kind of distracted by a romance subplot. And then From the Land of the Moon, which stars Marion Cotillard. It's a drama from France. Kind of not really good. It's been like a month since I watched that one. I barely remember it, but anyway, it's not very good. And so I've got those on the horizon. Those will show up later today. You can follow me on Twitter at Real Joel Copling. I was about to say my old handle. You can follow me on Twitter at Real Joel Copling, and follow my various ramblings on Facebook if you want to. I have a public account. So anyway, that's where I am.
That is where Joel's presence is, and my presence will be on Twitter at RealChaseLee. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I have the lovely review of Home Again, It Sucks. And then, of course, if you guys like this podcast and you want to spread it around, please let people know. So like, share, review, all that stuff. Follow on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes, SoundCloud. We're all over the place. I know we went a little long today, but that's okay, because we hadn't seen you guys in a couple weeks, and we actually made it the exact time length as the original TV series back in the 90s, so it actually worked out full circle, ladies and gentlemen. So let us know everything down below, and if you want to if you forgot anything or whatever, all the links will be in the description below as well. For next week, episode 199, getting dangerously close there, we will be doing American Assassin, so that should be fun. Dylan O'Brien, Michael Keaton, are you an assassin? That was my terrible Michael Keaton impression, so that will not be on the show next week. But if it is, I'll work on it. So that will be next week, and then, of course, the 200th episode is coming around the corner, so get ready, folks. But yeah, That is Joel over there. I'm Chase Lee. And hey, guys, listen, if you made it through this entire almost 3-hour-long podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully we convince you to be one. The intro and outro music is done by my friends band Fervent Roze. Once again, everything is in that description. You crazy, beautiful people. We will see you guys next week on Reel Me In, a movie podcast. Let's play that music. Bye-bye.